Chapter 1. Young Master Bad News. Miss Yu Yao is going to marry 7th young master. Outside the door, a tall and slender girl with a swaying body rushed in while panting. This was a beautiful girl with an incomparably hot body. She had long hair and long legs, and her willowy eyebrows revealed a youthful liveliness. The only pity was that there was a blood-red birthmark on her face that covered half of her cheek, destroying this beauty. A pale-faced youth in the room was instantly enraged. His eyes were bloodshot as he clenched his teeth. His eyes were filled with anger. How can this be? Yu Yao and I were betrothed since birth. How can she marry Qin Feng? Qin Feng shouted himself hoarse. How can the patriarch do this? Back then, my father made great contributions to the family. When the bandits in the north were ransacking the city, who was the one who fought for 3 days and 3 nights? Who was the one who used his body to block the city gate? If not, how could my mother be taken advantage of by the bandits and be born prematurely in the chaos? How can they treat us like this? I refuse to accept this. I must seek justice from the patriarch. Before Qin Feng could walk out of the courtyard, he was blocked by a group of people who had been waiting outside for a long time. A youth with triangular eyes and a malicious face looked at Qin Feng with a sinister smile. Sickly bastard, how dare you disturb the patriarch? Why don't you take a look at yourself? Miss Yu Yao is one of the top beauties in Luan County. Not only is she as beautiful as a fairy, but her martial arts talent is also outstanding. How can you be worthy of such a person? Now, Miss Yu Yao has also agreed to marry 7th brother. You better behave yourself. Bastard! Aren't you afraid of retribution for being so tyrannical? Qin Feng glared. A gush of blood almost rushed to his head. He clenched his fists so tightly that his fingernails almost pierced into his flesh. Qin Feng didn't care what Yu Yao looked like, but he couldn't accept this kind of humiliation. Qin Muhan's gaze was cold as he looked at Qin Feng. His eyes were filled with disdain as he crossed his arms in front of his chest. The corners of his eyes were slightly raised as he looked down on everyone else. 9 levels of the martial path. The first level is tendon refining, the second level is bone forging, the third level is blood transformation, the fourth level is energy sense, the fifth level is strengthening inner, the sixth level is divine power, the seventh level is true energy, the 8th level is liquid transformation, and the 9th level is divine transformation. Miss Yu Yao and 7th brother are both geniuses at the peak of the 3rd stage of the martial arts realm. Miss Yu Yao broke through the 4th stage of the martial arts realm a few days ago and comprehended the wonderful use of Neishi. But you, sickly ghost, have been thin and weak since childhood. Your meridians are cold and you can't cultivate. In my opinion, living is a waste of the family's resources. As for retribution, Qin Muhan chuckled. He glanced at his cousins who were laughing around him and pretended to be elegant as he stretched out his hand. Brothers, look at our 9th brother. He's still so naive. Come and teach him what retribution is. Bang 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 bang. After Qin Muhan finished speaking, a few of his cousins stepped forward and started punching and kicking him. Let me tell you, Qin Feng, we called you 9th brother because we respected you. If we didn't respect you, you're nothing. You're just a bastard. How dare you curse us? Let me tell you, our fists are retribution. How dare you ruin 7th brother's plans? You're overestimating yourself. This matter was personally agreed to by the patriarch. Moreover, there's no marriage contract, no keepsake, and no matchmaker to prove it. Who would believe you? How dare you argue with the patriarch? How naive. A piece of trash dares to ruin 7th brother's plans? You're courting death. Qin Feng resisted with all his might. However, his meridians were weak since he was young and were disturbed by the cold yin qi. His cultivation had been stuck at the early stage of the 1st stage of the martial path. How could he be a match for his cousins who were at the late stage of the 1st stage of the martial path? Fists rained down on Qin Feng's body. However, the pain in his heart was nothing compared to the pain in his heart. At this moment, Qin Feng's heart was incomparably cold. Obviously, everything was within the calculations of the patriarch, abandoning a piece of trash like him in order to help Qin Feng. Qin Feng was originally a genius of the Qin clan. If he could replace Qin Feng and marry the daughter of the Yu clan, his position would naturally be more stable and it would be greatly beneficial to the Qin clan. The only one who would be sacrificed was Qin Feng. Not only would the marriage contract that his father had sacrificed himself for be taken away, but in order to cover up the truth, Qin Feng would also have to disappear. What a great plan! Sacrificing a piece of trash like me in exchange for the prosperity of the clan. Father, this is the clan that you sacrificed your life to protect. I wonder why the patriarch didn't ask about the marriage contract all these years. He didn't even allow the servants to discuss it. He even sent people to spread rumors that it was to protect a piece of trash like me from jealousy. So it turns out he was already prepared to sacrifice me. Patriarch is truly farsighted, haha. If there is a next life, I will definitely annihilate the Qin clan. Blood and foam overflowed from Qin Feng's mouth. He had a miserable smile on his face. His aura was getting weaker and weaker, but his eyes were staring straight ahead. They were filled with resentment, unwillingness, and complaints towards the heavens. Gradually, he fell into darkness. Faintly, Qin Feng could hear the anxious cries of his personal maid, Hong Lian, on a small mountain not far away. Two dignified old men were watching everything. One of the old men looked at Qin Feng, whose aura was getting weaker and weaker, and sighed. Second brother, are you really not going to stop this? Although Qin Feng's father is only a foster son you took in, after all, he has done his best for the Qin clan. Our Qin clan already owes him so much. If we sacrifice his son now, isn't it a little inappropriate? Fourth brother, you are too soft-hearted. Those who want to achieve great things don't care about trifles. In the past, I adopted Qin Feng as my adopted son, taught him to study and practice martial arts, started a family, and even wrote Qin Feng's name into the genealogy of the Qin clan. This is a great kindness. Why can't we just sacrifice his son? Feng has shown excellent martial arts talent since he was a child. He is intelligent and is the most promising successor of the Qin clan to revive the clan. If we sacrifice Qin Feng, Feng can marry Yu Yao. At that time Yu Yao, as the lady of the Qin clan, will definitely help Feng. With Feng's ability, it is not impossible for the Qin clan to rise to a higher level. The Qin clan was a big clan in Shanghai town. Their properties covered the entire waterway wharf. Qin Feng was the grandson of the current generation of the Qin clan. He was ranked 9th, but unfortunately, his reputation was in a mess. He was known as a good-for-nothing. But Qin Feng was different. He was also a direct descendant of the Qin clan, but he was the pride of the Qin clan. He was a famous genius of this generation. More importantly, Qin Feng was the grandson of the current clan head. Yu Yao was the daughter of the Yu clan in Shanghai town. The Yu clan was also a big clan that dominated a town. The marriage between the Yu clan and the Qin clan could be said to be a strong alliance. Both forces could rise to a higher level together. If he only allowed Qin Feng to marry Yu Yao, in the eyes of the Qin clan's patriarch, Qin Qingshan, it would undoubtedly be a reckless waste of a heavenly gift and an opportunity to bring the Qin clan to a higher level. Moreover, Qin Feng was the patriarch's legitimate grandson after all, while Qin Feng was ultimately not a person of the Qin clan's legitimate bloodline. The other old man was also clear about the reason. The corners of his mouth moved, but in the end, he did not try to persuade him. In the small courtyard, Qin Feng had already lost all signs of life. A strand of resentment that was invisible to the naked eye shot into the sky and suffused the sky above the entire small courtyard, and the dense resentment caused dark clouds and lightning to form in the sky, covering the heavens and the earth to be extremely shocking. Rumble! A bolt of lightning descended from the sky, and under the dumbstruck gaze of the little maidservant, it struck onto the body of Qin Feng, who lay on the ground without moving in the slightest. There was a fluctuation in the air, and a vague spiritual light appeared from the sky and quickly entered Qin Feng's body. In the huge bolt of lightning, an inaudible voice of surprise sounded. The vitality is like the tide, the heaven and earth are like the chaos, the earth is dark and yellow, dragons and snakes rise from the land. The positions of the heaven and earth demon gods are mostly vacant, but the heavens do not want me, the god of thunder, to come to such a great world. Chapter 2. After an unknown period of time, Qin Feng woke up from his slumber in a small courtyard. However, the Qin Feng that woke up was no longer the weak Qin Feng from before, but the soul of an old demon from 1,000,000 years in the future. Thunder God Qin Feng. Thunder God Qin Feng was an overlord of the heavens 1,000,000 years in the future. He rose up in the Dharma-ending age, and with his nature-defying talent, he grew from an ordinary warrior to a thunder god who was awe-inspiring on the Spirit Sea continent in just 1,000 years when the heaven and earth essence Qi was getting thinner and thinner. He was only half a step away from condensing a divine body and becoming an immortal demon god, but this half-step firmly shackled him. Every era had its own destiny, which condensed into the position of heaven and earth devil god. In the first era of ancient times, it was said that there were 129,600 demon god positions. In the second era, there were only 40,000 demon god positions left. After these demon god positions were completed, it was difficult to break through to the demon god realm even if one was shockingly talented and had unparalleled cultivation. In the Age of Chaos, the world's Yuan Qi was thin and the destiny was incomplete. There was not a single demon god position. Becoming a demigod was already the peak of perfection, shocking many powerhouses of the continent. They were hailed as peerless powerhouses that were hard to come by in 100,000 years. In order to break through the last step, Qin Feng traveled through countless countries, visited countless ancient sects, read ancient texts, and entered various great ruins in search of information that could help him break through. In the end, he really did find a strange ruin. In the ruin, he obtained the supreme treasure of the world that had been lost for tens of thousands of years, the space-time dual-image scripture, the Book of Universe. It was said that the space-time dual-image scripture was the divine tool of an eternal ruler of the world, the space-time god. Any powerhouse that obtained this divine tool could use it to obtain the legacy of the ancient space-time god and comprehend the space-time laws of the world, thereby becoming a new space-time god. Just when Qin Feng obtained the supreme treasure, the Universe Book, a change occurred in the ancient ruins. A terrifying space-time distortion actually occurred, shattering his powerful body that could tear through space. His soul was sent back to 1,000,000 years ago, the golden era where countless gods and devils were born. Qin Feng had thought countless times that if he had been born in that era where the world's Yuan Qi was abundant, perhaps his achievements would not have stopped at the demigod level and he would have regretted it for the rest of his life. Disregarding the joy of rebirth in his mind, his current situation did not seem too good. Qin Feng raised his pale and weak palm, feeling the soreness and weakness of this body. His eyes revealed a faint fierceness. Suppressing the discomfort of being so weak, he browsed through the memories of this body from when it was young until now. Soon, he had a general understanding of this body's past and the situation it was in. He secretly thought in his heart, "I didn't expect this body to be the son of a commandery of the Linghai continent, the Yen country. The Linghai continent is vast and countless countries crisscross. The weakest country is called a commandery, and there are powerful empires and even more powerful countries. However, Even a small commandery extends for tens of millions of miles and has a vast territory. However, I have heard of the Linghai continent in my previous life. It is the south of the Iron Mountain that stretches for hundreds of millions of kilometers. The Yen country is not a large country, but its territory is not small either. The Qin family is a family from the Upper River town, and it is said that they inherited from the Qin family of Mountain River City. The Upper River town is just a branch of the Qin family of Mountain River City. From the memories of this body, Qin Feng learned that the power system here was not much different from a million years in the future. In the past, there were still 9 levels of the martial path, strengthening the muscles, forging the bones, strengthening the qi, and nourishing the breath. The first level was tendon refining, the second level was bone forging, the third level was blood changing, the fourth level was qi sensing, the fifth level was strengthening the inner body, the sixth level was divine power, the seventh level was true qi, the eighth level was liquid transformation, and the ninth level was God transformation. After the transformation, one's true qi would be like wind and thunder, connecting the bridge between heaven and earth, stepping into the pulse-condensing realm, sea of reincarnation realm, nirvana realm, rebirth realm, and then the legendary divine demon realm, creator, master of chaos and eternal dominator. In the 9 heavens of the martial path, the first layer would give one the strength of 3 stones and 12 caddies. In the second layer, one would have the strength to fight a tiger. In the third layer, one would have the strength to throw an elephant. The fourth level of the martial path would be even more powerful. One would be able to comprehend qi sensing and produce a hidden force that corrodes the bones from the inside out. The fifth level of the martial path would allow one's inner breath to circulate through the body. Even if one were to drown in water for a day and a night, one would not die. The sixth level of the martial path would allow one's inner breath to be like wind and thunder, possessing the strength of thunder. The seventh level of the martial path would allow one to comprehend Xiantian true qi and have an endless supply of true qi. The eighth level of the martial path would allow one's true qi to be turned into liquid and wind and thunder. The ninth level of the martial path would allow one to become one with the spirit. One would be able to excavate the divine treasures within the body and comprehend the power of the divine treasures. Entering the final transformation, the moment one entered the pulse-condensing realm, one would possess unimaginable divine powers. One could be able to swallow clouds and spit out fog, control ice, fire, thunder, and lightning, fly in the air, control yin and yang, and all sorts of terrifying divine powers. Qin Feng originally had the cultivation of the first level of the martial path. At that time, he was considered a genius in the Qin clan. However, due to unknown reasons, he did not make any progress for many years. Not only did he not improve, but he also regressed. His body became weaker and weaker, and he became weaker than a normal person. Qin Feng felt as if he was personally in the situation. He saw the young man slowly turn from a high-spirited genius into a trash that everyone despised. He could empathize with the pain, grievance, and pain of the young man. However, as he watched, he suddenly felt that something was amiss. He smelled a conspiracy. There seems to be someone who wants to kill the owner of this body. This room has a cold and sinister smell. The layout of the room is very similar to a very sinister formation, the 3-in-1 Qi formation. A cold light flashed in Qin Feng's eyes. His gaze was like lightning as it swept across the room's layout and layout. He was shocked. The god of thunder of the later generation was also known as the god of wisdom. In order to find a way to break through to the divine demon realm, he had read countless ancient books and explored countless ruins. One must know that being able to cultivate to the half-step divine demon realm in the Dharma ending age, when Yuan Qi was about to dry up, was definitely not something that could be done just by relying on one's own talent. He was known as the master of alchemy and array. It was not an undeserved reputation. Looking at the layout outside, it was obvious that someone had set it up in advance. The original owner of this body obviously did not know anything about it. Hence, he had been taken advantage of and died without knowing why. Combining all of Qin Feng's experiences, a clear plot appeared in front of him. Qin Feng's family was the sacrifice of a family's power struggle. Without a doubt, this 3-in single Qi formation was specially prepared for Qin Feng to turn him into a trash. I just don't know why they didn't just kill him directly. Why go through so much trouble? Is Mo Fei worried about the missing Qin Zhan? Forget it. At this moment, some people are probably already sharpening their knives. In their eyes, I'm just a piece of trash lying on the bed waiting for death. If I'm not wrong, according to the cautious nature of the Qin clan's patriarch, he will immediately send someone to kill a piece of trash like me in order to be safe. Then, he will create the illusion that I've died of a sudden illness. This will be a perfect end to this plot. A trace of fierceness flashed through Qin Feng's eyes. At this moment, he had already become the owner of this body. Naturally, he had taken over everything in this body. To those who had bad intentions, he had always taken an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and blood for blood. Qin Feng closed his eyes and pondered. Currently, the most important thing was to cultivate. In the Spirit Sea continent, martial arts were respected. Breaking all techniques with one's strength was the way of the king. Before his death, he was the god of thunder. What he cultivated was the 9th heaven Thunder Emperor scripture. This technique was also one of the top legendary techniques in the Spirit Sea continent. In the Spirit Sea continent, whether it was techniques or martial arts, the levels were very clear. From low to high, they were the human martial level, spiritual martial level, genuine martial level, Tao martial level, legendary level, and mythical level. The Qin family in the Upper River town was famous because they had a mid-level spiritual martial level, 9-wind howling technique. Because of this technique, the Qin family also became powerful and prosperous. They even occupied the best land and water port near the Qinhuai River and were extremely wealthy. It could be said that an important technique was the guarantee of a sect's prosperity. In his previous life, Qin Feng cultivated the 9th heaven Thunder Emperor scripture. This was a legendary technique passed down from the ancient god of thunder. This was the ancient thunder god's inheritance law code. When this cultivation technique was first born, it caused the land to be littered with corpses and blood to flow for thousands of miles. For the sake of this cultivation technique, Qin Feng had killed who knows how many powerful supremes in the Wind Thunder Cavern before he obtained this inheritance. It was also because of this inheritance that Qin Feng was able to stand out from the other geniuses and gain the reputation of being the god of thunder. However, this cultivation method could only be practiced at the pulse condensation stage, so he couldn't practice it for the time being. Moreover, the 3-in absolute physique was a trash physique. Not to mention this wondrous and peerless legendary cultivation method, it couldn't even practice a basic cultivation method. Qin Feng felt hatred in his heart. Various fragments of memories flashed through his mind as he searched for a solution. He secretly rejoiced in his heart. Thankfully, in order to search for ancient relics, I've wiped out a lot of ancient sects and seized a lot of ancient books. Countless advanced cultivation arts and secret recipes have been stored in my head. Although these powerful and unpredictable cultivation arts have become mere decorations in the age of Vipralopa decline, they can still exert incredible power at this moment. Very quickly, a peculiar cultivation technique appeared in his mind. Chapter 3. This strange recipe was obtained from the ruins of an ancient sect. At that time, Qin Feng's cultivation was at Dashang, so he didn't pay much attention to it. But now that he opened it, he was surprised to find that this ancient recipe was strange. This nameless recipe was actually a secret technique that harvested yin to supplement yang. It used a woman's purest primordial yin to fight poison with poison, washing away the cold yin energy in the 3 yin extinction physique. Then, it was supplemented with a spiritual item called the profound yang ginseng to protect the heart meridians, washing away the cold yin energy in the 3 yin extinction physique. It was even possible to obtain the opportunity to combine yin and yang, stepping into the foundation establishment stage and entering the door of martial arts. But in this way, the person whose primordial yin was stolen would be miserable. The primordial yin was the source of a woman. Once it was stolen, the person's primordial yin would be severely injured, and they wouldn't be able to get out of bed for 10 days to half a month. In the worst case, their foundation would be destroyed, and it would be difficult for them to take another step in martial arts. This was an extremely insidious secret technique. The best target to steal was a beautiful woman who cultivated the martial Tao. If it was an ordinary woman, one time wouldn't be enough, and they would need to search for more targets. This would also cause the yin energy to become impure and lead to many negative consequences. Does the Qin family have a beautiful woman who cultivates the martial Tao? Qin Feng didn't care if this cultivation method was insidious or not. His eyes immediately turned to the Qin family. His eyes flashed as he thought to himself, "Previously, I, Qin Feng, and my family spilled blood for the Qin family. When it was time to sacrifice, we sacrificed. Now, it's time for the Qin family to sacrifice themselves for Qin Feng. In order to get rid of the label of trash, I ask you to sacrifice yourselves. However, the Qin family is heavily guarded, and these women's boudoirs are the most important. Wait for me to find some herbs and mix them with some good medicine. I don't want to leave any evidence behind." Creak. The sound of the door opening woke Qin Feng up. A beautiful young girl saw Qin Feng lying on the bed with his eyes open. The young girl happily walked over. "Young master!" Honglian. A faint fragrance wafted over, evoking memories in Qin Feng's mind. The worry, anxiety, and happiness in the girl's eyes assaulted Qin Feng's mind. Suddenly, Qin Feng instantly understood the identity of this girl. His personal maid, Red Lotus, was a little girl he had brought back from the side of the road a few years ago. At that time, Red Lotus was thin and small, her face dry and yellow. She knelt alone by the side of the street. Everyone in the town said that she was a jinx who brought bad luck to her parents and brothers. They were unwilling to get close to her and even scolded her. At that time, Qin Feng pitied her for being thin and small. It was probably because they were in the same boat that he was moved and brought this little girl back. After a period of recuperation, the little girl actually became more and more attractive. Her figure was graceful, her waist was alluring, and her eyes were like water. If it wasn't for the blood-colored birthmark that covered half of her face, Qin Feng wouldn't have been able to protect her with his ability. Even so, there were plenty of troublemakers who came looking for trouble. All these years, Qin Feng's body was thin and weak, and Red Lotus had been taking care of him. The two of them had a deep relationship. Qin Feng had let her go several times, but Red Lotus insisted on staying to take care of him. Qin Feng closed his eyes. At this moment, no one knew the shock in his heart. With just one look, he could tell that this was a Heaven Fiend blood woman. Her fate was against the Heaven Fiend, and she was the reincarnation of the blood god. There was a red mole in between her brows that contained the ominous aura of the devil god. This was the symbol of a Heaven Fiend blood woman. When he opened his eyes, he found a treasure. Qin Feng's heart almost jumped out of his chest. He couldn't believe his eyes. However, his powerful spiritual sense told him that he was not wrong. This little girl in front of him indeed contained a blood-colored aura that even he couldn't compare to at his peak. The world was extremely fierce and ruthless. There was only one Heaven Fiend blood woman in each generation. Only when the previous Heaven Fiend blood woman died would the Heaven Fiend blood aura give birth to another one. Qin Feng remembered that in his previous life, a bloody queen was born. This bloody queen was the heaven fiend Blood Woman. The moment she was born, she single-handedly destroyed an entire plain and turned it into a sea of blood. Her ferocity was unparalleled and terrifying. Even Thunder God Qin Feng, who was at his peak, didn't dare to meet her. This was not the end of the Heaven Fiend Blood Woman's mystical abilities. Every generation of Heaven Fiend Blood Woman was a peerless beauty. Not only did they inherit the Heaven Fiend Blood Aura, but they also had unparalleled charm. They were born to be beautiful. For example, the previous Bloody Queen was one of the top 10 beauties in the continent. It was rumored that the Heaven Fiend Blood Woman's virginity was very mystical. Once a Blood Woman matured, if one could obtain her heart and willingly give it to her wholeheartedly and dual cultivate with her, one could immediately break through to the next realm. This was the most sought-after aspect of the Heaven Fiend Blood Woman. Even though they were fierce and awe-inspiring, they were still sought after by powerful beings. The Bloody Queen's disappearance 10,000 years ago was related to this. The Heaven Fiend Blood Woman only had one partner in her life. If her partner died, she would die with her heart broken. On the bed, Qin Feng looked at the little maidservant who was gently wiping his body. Her face was full of heartache. No wonder the owner of this body died so quickly. The Heaven Fiend Blood Woman wasn't someone that could be suppressed by the providence of an ordinary person. After the little maidservant Hong Lian finished wiping his body and tidying his bed, she hurriedly brought a bowl of plain porridge from the kitchen. Unexpectedly, there was even a hint of meat on the porridge. This was very rare. Ever since he was assigned to this courtyard when he was 12 years old, the clan's supply of money had been cut off. Qin Feng's body was thin and weak. He couldn't withstand the sun and wind, so he couldn't work. In the past, the little maidservant worked hard and weaved cloth day and night in exchange for some food. Most of the food was bland. As for meat, that was a memory from when he was young. The little maidservant carefully helped him finish the bowl of porridge and wiped his lips. Seeing her weak appearance, Qin Feng couldn't help but feel touched. The dark thoughts that had just appeared in his mind disappeared without a trace. Qin Feng wasn't a good person. He was unscrupulous and ruthless. However, he had his own principles. He wouldn't do anything bad to someone who was sincerely willing to sacrifice for him. The little maidservant didn't know that her master, who had changed souls, had his eyes on her for a moment. After the little maidservant finished cleaning up the bowls and chopsticks, hurried footsteps could be heard from outside. The little maidservant's figure came into view again. This time, the little maidservant said with a happy expression, "Young master, the clan head heard that you were injured. He sent people to send some money and 2 guards to protect you." "Protect me? They should be monitoring me. They might have received a secret order to take our lives if necessary." Qin Feng was startled. Then, he narrowed his eyes and sneered. The little maidservant's beautiful face changed when she heard this. She suddenly lost her composure and said worriedly, "Young master, what should we do?" "Ninth young master, is ninth young master here?" At this moment, a hoarse voice of a male duck came from outside the room. Bang bang bang. There was a violent knock on the door. Although the person outside was asking, he didn't have the slightest intention of respecting the master. With a bang, the door was kicked open by brute force. A middle-aged man dressed as a guard swaggered in. His face was sallow and his eyes were crooked. He was about 30 years old. His face was full of the aura of a common man. Behind him was a fierce-looking man with a strong back and a bare waist. There was a short knife at his waist. His eyes were fierce, as if he wanted to eat someone. When the middle-aged man entered the room, his gaze first swept over Qin Feng, who was on the bed. A trace of contempt, disdain, and a deeply hidden coldness flashed through his eyes. However, he still bowed grandly. After bowing, he looked at the surrounding dilapidated house, and cursed inwardly. In the end, his gaze landed on the pale young man with a cold expression. He was somewhat surprised by the other party's calmness. However, after a moment, he chuckled and said in a tone that was neither overbearing nor overbearing, "Ninth young master, we are the guards sent by the master. From now on, we will be fully responsible for your safety. However, we are also sent by the master. I hope the ninth young master won't make it difficult for us. The ninth young master is a noble. You can't be compared with us lowly servants. So, I advise the ninth young master to behave in the future. Don't bump into anything. It's best if you don't take a step out of the courtyard in the future. Otherwise, we won't be able to do anything." There was not the slightest bit of respect in his words. Ever since he entered the door, he had been arrogant and lofty, as if the position of the servant and the master had been completely reversed. Not only did he have no respect for the master, he also did not hide his contempt and ridicule. Qin Feng's expression was cold, but the little maid beside the bed could not help but angrily say, "How is this protection? This is house arrest. How can you do this?" The middle-aged guard's eyes turned cold as his gaze fell on Hong Lian, who was serving beside him. Soon, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes, as if he had found a treasure in a corner. He looked at Hong Lian from head to toe with an unbridled and lustful gaze. As Hong Lian panicked, he clicked his tongue and said to the ferocious big man behind him after a long while, "Yen Laosi, although our ninth young master is a good-for-nothing, his luck with women isn't bad. His personal girl is a little ugly, but her figure is really good. But it's a pity that the young master can't move on the bed. Why don't you let us examine him first?" The ferocious man's eyes were burning as he stared at the hot figure of Red Lotus. He nodded repeatedly. "Big brother, I didn't expect this damn place to have such good luck. This time, let me have a taste first." Chapter 4. The gazes of the two men were like that of wolves, tigers, and leopards, while the little maid was like a lamb under the claws of a hungry wolf. Hearing Yen Laosi's request, the sinister middle-aged man licked his dry lips and said with a lewd smile, "Fine, Laosi, you have to be gentler. Don't break this delicate little girl. Little girl, just obediently submit to us brothers. Don't resist. Your good-for-nothing young master looks like a sick ghost. He will fall if the wind blows. Sooner or later, he will die. To tell you the truth, someone has already told us not to let him live past tonight. Tomorrow, everyone will receive the news that the ninth young master of the Qin family died of a disease in his early years. If you submit to us brothers, maybe we will be soft-hearted and spare your little life." At this moment, the two of them had completely let go of their greed and didn't conceal their killing intent towards Qin Feng at all. From their point of view, Qin Feng was already a fish on their chopping board, and they could do whatever they wanted. The reason why they didn't kill Qin Feng and didn't act immediately was probably because of the dark side in their hearts. They wanted to see the usually lofty young master crying in pain. But when they thought of this situation, the two men couldn't help but become more excited. The little maid showed a determined expression. Unexpectedly, facing two hungry wolves, she was not afraid. Instead, under Qin Feng's surprised expression, she rushed to the bedside loom, picked up a pair of shining scissors, and used her weak body to block the bed. The guard in front of Qin Feng was like an angry tiger, waving the scissors while angrily shouting, "Don't you dare touch a single hair on the young master's head." As she spoke, she suppressed the fear in her eyes and said to Qin Feng, "Young master, don't be afraid. Red Lotus will protect you." However, the more it was like this, the more excited the two guards became. They laughed strangely and were in high spirits, like cats catching a mouse. As guards of the Qin family, they had all cultivated some of the basic martial arts of the Qin family. Although they hadn't reached the entry level, it was not something a little girl could resist. The shifty-eyed middle-aged guard laughed obscenely. This little girl looks quite stubborn, but it's more fun to play with her like this. What a pair of vicious dogs that can bite! As expected of the old beast's dog. To be a lackey to such an extent, you have already grasped the essence of being a dog. Suddenly, a cold voice rang out. The few people in the room were startled. They quickly followed the sound and saw the handsome young man on the bed with a cold smile on his face. It was unknown when he had forced himself to sit up. Perhaps it was because of the intense pain in his body. His thin body looked like it was extremely difficult for him to support himself. His dry, yellowish-black hair draped over his shoulders. There was a trace of gentleness between his brows, and his pitch-black eyes were like pitch-black ancient wells. However, no matter how you looked at it, there was a trace of arrogance and dominance. "How dare you talk to us like that?" The two guards pointed at Qin Feng in disbelief. The two of them were so angry that their faces turned red. "Two stinking dogs, if you know what's good for you, get over here and kneel down, wagging your tails and begging for mercy. Today I'll spare your dog lives. Otherwise, I'll break your bones and let you die without a complete corpse." Qin Feng had never suppressed the evil in his bones. The little handmaiden hurriedly helped her young master up. She didn't know why, but she felt that the young master seemed a little different today. Overbearing, rude, and had an indescribable pressure. The two guards' complexions changed, and then their faces turned red. They flew into a rage out of humiliation. As servants, the most taboo thing was for someone to curse dogs in front of them, although they were indeed dogs raised by the Qin family. "You trash, I originally wanted to kill you later. It seems that you're tired of living." The fiendish burly man's temper became even more irritable. Under his anger, he laughed malevolently and couldn't help but rush forward with large strides. His palm that was the size of a palm leaf fan grabbed at Qin Feng's neck, as if he wanted to lift him up like a little chick. The little handmaiden, Red Lotus, was anxious and was about to rush forward. However, Qin Feng was faster than her. He grabbed the incoming palm with one hand and held it tightly. According to common sense, with Qin Feng's thin, weak, and heavily injured body, it was already a miracle for him to be able to crawl up. However, how could he possibly catch Yen Laosi, who was strong and had practiced some body-tempering fist techniques? However, Yen Laosi did not think so. The moment that weak hand that seemed like it could break with a snap grabbed him, he was terrified to discover that his entire body suddenly became numb and weak. He could not move at all. Moreover, there was a terrifying feeling. All the strength in his body seemed to have been strangely sucked away. The great method of extracting marrow and transforming essence. Qin Feng looked very weak. There was a smile on his face, but there was a trace of a sneer in his eyes. A steady stream of pure profound qi was drawn from his palm that was holding Yen Laosi. A large amount of profound qi nourished his weak body and recovered his injured primordial qi. The essence extraction technique was a martial Dao level secret technique created by Qin Feng in his previous life. This was also the peerless technique that allowed the god of thunder in his previous life to move unhindered and remain undefeated in numerous battles. This was an extremely vicious technique that could extract all of the enemy's essence qi and transform it into the user's own essence qi, which would be absorbed endlessly to heal the user's injuries. This secret method had almost been integrated into his bones and had become an instinct of his body. Yen Laosi was the first person Qin Feng had used this method since his rebirth. He saw that the profound qi in his marrow was being drawn away, and the strength in his whole body was flowing away like a waterproof gate. The gloomy middle-aged man was a little confused. Why did Yen Laosi look like he had seen a ghost? Suddenly, he couldn't help but walk forward with a gloomy face and scold. "Yen Laosi, are you stupid? Why don't you kill this bastard? What are you waiting for?" Yen Laosi was about to go crazy. This guy was too stupid. Didn't he see that there was something wrong with his expression? "Hurry up and go find help. Something was wrong with the 9th young master. You came at the right time. You two are good brothers. Enjoy life together and die together. Come at me together. Qin Feng laughed loudly. Seeing the gloomy middle-aged man approaching, his other hand grabbed the gloomy middle-aged man's arm. The great method of extracting marrow and transforming essence was activated again. A stream of pure profound qi was forcibly drawn out from the gloomy middle-aged man's body and poured into his weak body. In the gloomy middle-aged man's frightened eyes, the mellow profound qi began to nourish his badly injured body. His internal organs seemed to be soaked in a hot spring. His pale face showed a trace of red, as if he was drunk. How comfortable! Ever since I reached the peak of my cultivation, I haven't used this technique for a long time. I'm almost out of practice. Qin Feng chuckled. Seeing the begging expressions on their faces, a cold sneer appeared in his eyes. Since the two of you took the initiative to send tonics to me, I'll show mercy this time. I'll only chop off your bones and use them to make fire. Looking at their frightened faces, Qin Feng gave a weird smile and increased his power to activate the marrow extraction to yuan restoration technique, draining all of their profound qi in one breath. The profound qi of the two people was even better than the medicinal efficacy of the 200-year-old ginseng. In just a moment, Qin Feng's injuries were healed, and he was full of energy. Pucci! At the same time, the two guards instantly turned into two withered corpses. Their essence qi completely dissipated, leaving behind only a pile of stinky skin. The little handmaiden stared blankly at the scene in front of her. Her mouth was slightly open, her eyes were blinking, and her long eyelashes were trembling. She looked very cute. Seeing this, Qin Feng smiled and stretched his slightly sore arm. He gently tapped the head of the little maid who was in a daze. Amidst the startled cries, the little maid covered her head and cried out with a face full of grievance, "Young master, don't worry." "Young master." Qin Feng smiled and looked at the green mountains and clear waters outside the door. "Burn the stinky skins of these two people. I'll go out for a while. If someone asks, just say that I'm asleep and block them. If you can't block them, just say that I was taken to the back mountain by these two people." Following Qin Feng's gaze, the little handmaiden shuddered. Two living people turned into a pile of dry wood in an instant. This was too horrible. When did her young master become so ferocious and horrible? But the strange thing was that she didn't feel disgusted. Instead, she felt a trace of joy in her heart. It seemed that there was a trace of hostility in her heart, telling her that this was how things should be done. This feeling not only surprised the little handmaiden, but also made her panic. Hearing this, she replied in a daze. "Young master, you have to be careful." Qin Feng waved his hand and sneered. "Don't worry, your young master is no longer a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Daring to eat fish, aren't they afraid that the fish bones will pierce their throats? Also, Hong Lian, do you know where the Qin family's medicine field is?" Qin Feng wanted to find the whereabouts of the Xianyang ginseng. The Xianyang ginseng wasn't a precious spirit medicine because its medicinal properties were gentle. It should be planted in the family's medicine field. Stealing a woman's primordial yin was not a small matter. Once it was successfully stolen, the woman's primordial yin would definitely stimulate his 3 yin absolute meridians, and the extreme yin cold would attack his heart. He had to have this kind of spirit medicine with warm yang properties to protect his heart meridians. He had to seize the opportunity to cleanse the 3 yin absolute body. Those people from the Qin family were determined to sacrifice him, so they definitely wouldn't let him go so easily. Once they found that something was wrong, they would definitely send stronger people to deal with him. However, to Qin Feng's surprise, the little handmaiden actually shook her head and said, "Young master, have you forgotten? Our Qin family is adjacent to the desolate mountain range. The mountain range is rich in spirit energy, and most of the spirit medicines are collected from the mountain range. Our Qin family doesn't need to plant any medicine fields. Qin Feng thought for a while, and a strange look flashed in his eyes as he thought in his heart. Desolate mountain range, why does it sound so familiar? After pondering for a long time, his eyes suddenly lit up, and a dusty memory rushed into his mind. That's right, he seemed to have seen the name of this mountain range in an ancient book in the future. It seemed that somewhere in the periphery of the desolate mountain range, there was an ancient temple that seemed to hide a small underground ruin. This was a small underground palace, and it was the alchemy place of a small ancient sect. The ruin contained an extremely rare pill. Chapter 5. The reason why Qin Feng remembered it so clearly was that it was one of the more famous relics that had been excavated at the beginning of the Golden Era. In the ancient records, the Linghai continent had several eras: the Chaotic Era, the Archean Era, the Antiquity Era, the Middle Era, and the Prehistoric Era, which was the end of the Archean Era. There was a great war in the Prehistoric Era, and many ancient existences from the Archean era had disappeared. Many unknown and dangerous changes had occurred, leaving many unsolved mysteries and even forbidden places on the continent. Even the heaven and earth had undergone a terrible change. In later generations, there was a legend that the Linghai continent was only a small piece of a vast and boundless continent. After the great change in the prehistoric era, it was the Golden Era, which was full of vitality. The Golden Era lasted 100,000 years. It was the last chance. After that, the Silver Era, when the tide of vitality of the world gradually receded, and the Bronze Era, when the riverbed of vitality of the world was exposed. Then, the Twilight Era, when the riverbed of vitality of the world was dried up, and the Dharma-ending Era, when the vitality of the world was almost cut off and fate was incomplete. The rise of the Golden Era had all kinds of legends in later generations. Of course, the most talked about were the endless mysterious relics and the Archean Era treasures that had been passed down from the relic. This small relic has not yet appeared. The appearance of this small relic and a few other small relics is called the beginning of the Golden Era. From this, it can be inferred that the curtain of the Golden Era has not yet opened. In my impression, the curtain of the Golden Era will only officially come after the appearance of this relic. Qin Feng speculated. The reason why Qin Feng had such a deep impression of this small relic was that this small relic and another relic would appear one after another in a short period of time. These 3 or 4 small relics were distributed in the Yen Kingdom and the neighboring Jin Kingdom. After these 3 or 4 small relics appeared, the relic that symbolized the beginning of the Golden Era would appear. Qin Feng remembered the other small relics very clearly, but their locations were relatively vague. However, he remembered the relic in the periphery of the Yen Kingdom's barbaric mountains very clearly. This was because there was an extremely rare elixir hidden in this small relic, the Xuanwu Divine Elixir, which was a divine elixir used to condense a flawless holy body. What was a flawless saint body? It was a perfect and flawless body with all the meridians open. The cultivation of martial arts also paid attention to one's aptitude. The best aptitude was called superior aptitude. Only 1 in 10,000 people could cultivate at 3 times the speed of others. 1 day was equivalent to 3 days for others, and 1 year was equivalent to 3 years for others. After that was the middle aptitude, which was 1 in 1,000. There might not even be 1 in 1,000 people with the middle aptitude. The cultivation speed of people with the middle aptitude was more than twice that of others. Inferior aptitude was also known as ordinary aptitude. However, even ordinary aptitude was only 1 in 100. However, aptitude was not something that couldn't be changed. Many people with trash physique could use some techniques to change their physique. However, even if one's physique could be changed, there was a limit to it. Being able to change one's physique to ordinary aptitude required a certain amount of luck. If one wanted to change one's physique to intermediate aptitude, it was not something that could be done by ordinary spirit pills. Below that was the trash physique. The trash physique was innately weak and couldn't withstand training. In other words, ordinary training wouldn't have any effect at all. It would even hurt oneself. However, it didn't cut off the path of cultivation. As long as one was diligent, they could change their physique to an inferior physique through enlightenment, some strange techniques, or spirit pills. Finally, there was the extreme physique. People with this physique not only had no aptitude for cultivation, but also had life-threatening consequences. For example, the 3-in absolute physique that Qin Feng was forced to cultivate was a trash physique. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary trash physique. Since this physique had the word absolute, it meant that the path of cultivation had been severed. As for the flawless saint physique, it was a physique that was even more terrifying than a superior aptitude. The body's innate meridians were wide open, and the muscles, bones, blood, and flesh were flawless. It was an innate fusion of elements. This kind of person was born to cultivate. They were the talents of saints. Their cultivation speed was 5 times that of others. The reason why Qin Feng had an impression of this ruin was because of this divine pill. This black tortoise divine pill was refined from the black tortoise divine embryo. It contained a wisp of the black tortoise divine beast's essence, which could completely change a person's aptitude. The black tortoise divine embryo was one of the 4 divine beasts of heaven and earth. It had an incomparably respected status among the divine beasts. Every black tortoise was born from heaven and earth and had an extraordinary physical body. This divine elixir was originally a precious medicine refined by an ancient powerhouse for his pregnant Taoist companion. He hoped that his child could be born with a flawless holy body. Unfortunately, an accident happened later and it disappeared, never to be seen again. This black tortoise divine pill had been refined in an alchemy furnace for 1,000 years and had absorbed countless elixir essences. It could be said to be very effective and had all kinds of inconceivable mysterious powers. In the future, a disciple of the Qin family found this ruin. However, because the black tortoise divine pill had absorbed all the elixir essences in the ruin and turned them into fossils, he thought it was a useless ruin. He reported this matter to a young master of the Qin family in exchange for benefit. However, he was not lucky enough to find the black tortoise divine pill in the alchemy furnace. In the end, the young master of the Qin family took advantage of it. In the future, this young master of the Qin family relied on this divine pill to make a name for himself. He was called the Black Tortoise Divine Sovereign and was only 1 step away from becoming the demon god. At this time, it had even been recorded in ancient books, and it had always been talked about enthusiastically by later generations of experts. It had a far-reaching impact, affecting generations of people. Countless people stepped forward one after another, entering and exiting the various great ancient ruins. Many people had lost their lives because of it, but there were also people who had obtained benefits. It seems that young master of the Qin family, who got the black tortoise divine pill, is called Qin Feng. No, the 7th brother of the Qin family is also called Qin Feng. Not knowing what to think, Qin Feng was startled. Soon, a trace of a strange smile flashed through his eyes. It was really a small world, haha, wasn't it? He once checked the real name of the famous black tortoise divine sovereign out of curiosity. His real name was Qin Feng. Qin Feng, the son of the first wife of the Qin family, had a pure bloodline and a noble birth. At a young age, he had the style of a big family. What was more rare was that his talent was extraordinary. He was tested to have a high aptitude for cultivation. He was the leader of the Qin family's resurgence and the favorite of the current patriarch. For this reason, the patriarch even paved the way for him. He planned 1,000 times and even sacrificed Qin Feng's family to help Qin Feng rise. Qin Feng was still the 7th young master who took away Qin Feng's fiancée. Chapter 6. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. If the Qin family wants to pave the road with the bones of Qin Feng's family, they have to ask for my permission. Qin Feng waved his sleeves and sneered. He was determined to seize this opportunity. Every time he seized an opportunity, it was a robbery of luck. If he succeeded, his luck would undoubtedly be more prosperous, just like how Qin Feng robbed the original Qin Feng. Just when Qin Feng made up his mind, in the Qin family's mansion in Shanghatown, a handsome young man who was talking to a dignified old man suddenly had an ominous feeling, as if something important was about to be taken away. He suddenly felt uneasy. "Qin Feng, what's wrong with you?" The dignified old man looked at Qin Feng, who was absent-minded, and frowned. "Grandpa, I feel uneasy, as if something ominous is about to happen." Qin Feng covered his chest, his face full of pain. This old man was the current head of the Qin family, Qin Qingshan. Qin Qingshan said with a serious face, "Qin Feng, have you been practicing too hard recently? Grandpa knows you have heard about Yu Yao's breakthrough and you are anxious. You should know that more haste, less speed. You are the pride of the Qin family, a rare genius in 100 years, the future leader of the resurgence. Don't destroy your future because of a moment of anger." Saying this, he smiled kindly and amiably. "The future of the Qin family depends on you. After Grandpa kills that person, you can marry Yu Yao without worry. After the two of you get married, the 100 years plan of the Qin family will be completed." Qin Feng nodded reluctantly, but there was always a trace of uneasiness in his eyes. He always felt that something was about to happen, but he couldn't figure out what it was. This feeling made him extremely agitated. "Let's not talk about this for now. Let me find the Xianyang ginseng, and remove the curse of the 3-in extreme body. That old bastard Qin Qingshan is too vicious. He actually created this extreme body. Even the Xuanwu divine pill can't remove it. Fortunately, there is always a way out." Qin Feng coldly snorted, full of helplessness. Fortunately, he was an erudite and knowledgeable person. Otherwise, if he was reborn into such a piece of trash, he would have missed the golden era in vain and could only sit and watch the storm surge. That would be a lifetime of regret. Qin Feng's shabby courtyard was located on Mount Xiang. This was a mountainous area belonging to the Qin clan in Lower River Town. One of the Qin clan's luxurious manors was located here. Every early summer, the Qin clan's disciples would go up the mountain to avoid the summer heat. Originally, this manor had been given to Qin Feng's family by the patriarch. Unfortunately, Qin Feng was not so lucky. After he was 12 years old, he was driven out. The owner of this place had been replaced by the 6th young master, Qin Mun. Qin Mun was ranked 6th among the direct descendants of the 4th branch of the Qin family. Her aptitude was above average, but she had already reached the second sky of martial arts. When Qin Feng left Mount Xiang, one of Qin Mun's cooks happened to see his whereabouts. Surprised, he immediately reported to Qin Mun with the idea of pleasing his master. "You're saying that the 9th young master went down the mountain alone? Wasn't he seriously injured by the 5th brother and should be lying in bed?" In the manor, a young man was leaning lazily on a tiger-skin chair. A few pretty maids were serving him with palm leaf fans. Rows upon rows of dried fruits were placed on the table in front of him, making him look very comfortable. This was a 15 or 16-year-old young man dressed in green. His face was full of arrogance and his lips were slightly thin. At first glance, one could tell that he was a fickle person. He was the 6th young master of the Qin clan, Qin Mun. This generation of the Qin clan was prosperous, with a total of more than 10 young masters. The 6th young master, Qin Mun, and the 5th young master, Qin Muhan, were both from the third branch. Among the young masters, they were also ranked higher. However, compared to the seventh young master, Qin Feng, who was known as the master of the clan's revival, all the other young masters paled in comparison. Ninth brother is so mysterious. Could it be that he has some secret? Qin Muyan thought, and a trace of interest flashed in his sinister triangular eyes. Rumor has it that Qin Zhan was only a martial artist with ordinary aptitude. Later on, in just a few years, he advanced continuously and was only one step away from entering the pulse-condensing realm. The Patriarch had always suspected that Qin Zhan was hiding some shocking secret, so he spent a lot of effort to capture Qin Zhan and tortured him in every possible way. However, Qin Zhan was also a tough nut to crack. No matter how they tortured him, he didn't say a word. No, I have to follow him and see what tricks he has up his sleeve. What if he really has some secret? Qin Muyun's eyes flashed with a trace of fiery greed. Qin Feng got down from the Qiang mountain and rushed towards the outskirts of the barbaric mountain range, along the other side of the mountain range. Along the way, he carefully avoided any traces of people. After all, his current identity was very sensitive. If someone found out that he had escaped from the Qin clan surveillance, it would be disadvantageous for him. Qin Feng didn't intend to go deep into the barbaric mountain range. Although the spirit qi in the barbaric mountain range was rich and there were various ancient herbs and elixirs, it was also a heaven for vicious beasts. The deeper he went, the greater the chances of encountering vicious beasts. The Qiang mountain range was a small branch of the barbaric mountain range. The deeper he went, the higher the altitude. Although the mysterious yang body was only an ordinary elixir, it still had certain requirements for its growing environment. First, it had to grow at a high altitude. Second, it had to have sufficient sunlight, but it couldn't be directly exposed. Generally speaking, it was a kind of elixir that grew on the mountainside facing the sun. Most of them grew on cliffs and precipitous cliffs. There were also some that grew in the mountains and forests. They usually bloomed with bright red flowers. Naturally, the older it was, the more potent its medicinal efficacy would be. 100-year-old elixir was already considered a very precious elixir. If it was 1,000-year-old elixir, it would be extraordinary. During the Age of Chaos, Qin Feng had lived for more than 1,000 years. However, in that 1,000 years, he had only seen a 1,000-year-old mysterious yang ginseng once. For this 1,000-year-old mysterious yang ginseng, he had killed dozens of secluded sect elders and annihilated 4 or 5 powerful sects that had existed for thousands of years before he was able to snatch it. What Qin Feng needed was a 100-year-old mysterious yang ginseng. This was the only way to ensure that he could protect his heart and meridians. Walking in the gloomy mountain forest, dark clouds covered the sky as if a heavy rain was coming. Qin Feng's eyes wandered around the dusky mountain forest, looking for a target. Soon, he found a mysterious yang ginseng under an ancient tree that was covered in thorns and vines. He carefully dug up the soil, but to his disappointment, this mysterious yang ginseng was only 5 or 6 years old. It didn't seem to meet his requirements. The footprints here are messy. There are people and beasts here. It seems like there are often herb gatherers here. All the old herbs here have been picked. I must climb a few more mountains. However, the insects here are very annoying. They always follow me. Qin Feng casually pinched a few mosquitoes that came to suck blood to death. With a sizzling sound, the mosquitoes that had sucked enough blood were pinched to death. A puff of blood appeared in his palm. He stood up and turned around. His gaze swept over a certain place behind him, as if he had sensed something. He smiled with a profound meaning and quickly continued to walk forward. Not long after he left, a malicious youth walked out from an ancient tree. The youth had a bewildered expression as he muttered to himself. Did he find out that I'm following him? Impossible. Ninth brother's cultivation of the first heaven of the martial path has been crippled. How can he find out that I'm at the second heaven of the martial path? What's more, so what if he found out? He disdainfully threw away the guess in his mind, and quietly continued to follow Qin Feng. However, he soon found out that Qin Feng had begun to walk in circles in the mountain forest. He dug here and there. He didn't know if it was intentional or not, but he specifically went to places with thorns and mosquitoes. Not long after, Qin Myun was bitten by the mosquitoes in the mountain. The mosquitoes in the mountain were the most poisonous. Even Qin Myun, who had cultivated to the second heaven of the martial path, couldn't avoid being attacked by mosquitoes. Unless one cultivated to the fourth heaven of the martial path and condensed inner breath, one would be able to kill these poisonous mosquitoes. Just when Qin Myun was getting impatient, his face turned gloomy. He didn't know why Qin Feng had disappeared. He had been dumped by Qin Feng. In the mountain forest, Qin Myun's face was ashen. The anger in his eyes congealed and was about to burst out. Qin Feng, you bastard, you dare to play with this young master. This young master won't let you go. You're too far away from this old ancestor's game of stalking. If it wasn't for the fact that this old ancestor didn't have the confidence to keep you alive, this old ancestor wouldn't have played this game with you. After easily throwing off Qin Myun, the corner of the old monster's eyes revealed a trace of pride. As a cunning old fox, he had long discovered that someone was secretly following him. However, he didn't know and beat the person at his own game. After making the person behind him suffer, he used the terrain to throw off the person who was following him. With no one following him, Qin Feng climbed over several large mountains and found his target on a steep cliff. It was a profound yang ginseng that wasn't much different from an ordinary ginseng. Its weight was only slightly heavier than an ordinary ginseng. Holding it in his hand, there wasn't much difference. However, for Qin Feng, who was well versed in the Tao of herbs, he could tell at a glance that this was a 100-year-old profound yang ginseng. This 100-year-old profound yang ginseng was also guarded by a spirit snake. However, this wasn't a problem for Qin Feng. Although he couldn't defeat this arm-sized red spirit snake, he had smeared a type of herb on his body that was extremely repulsive to snake insects. Thus, he easily chased away this red spirit snake and took it into his hands. After successfully collecting this herb, Qin Feng was in a good mood. He immediately went down the mountain from the other side of the mountain and planned to obtain a woman's primordial yin. Going down the mountain, there was a huge waterfall. From afar, the rumbling sound was like 10,000 claps of thunder. The rumbling sound was deafening. The water of the waterfall rushed down from the mountain like a jade dragon from the ninth heaven. It formed a deep pool on the ground and flowed out along the valley of the long river. The water surged and the water was clear. Qin Feng stopped at a mountain path on the side of the waterfall and rested for a moment beside the pool. He stood up and was about to return to the mountain, but his sharp eyes saw a strange white object on the pool. When the object floated near with the water, it turned out to be an unconscious woman in white. This woman floated above the pool. Her appearance couldn't be seen clearly, but her situation was extremely worrying. Qin Feng only hesitated for a moment before he immediately rushed into the water. With the sound of splashing water, he fished out the woman. What a beautiful woman! Turning over the woman's body, Qin Feng felt an amazing elasticity coming from her slender waist. Qin Feng couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat. He raised his head and looked directly at her. Qin Feng's eyes flashed with a trace of amazement. He had lived for thousands of years and had seen countless beauties. If ordinary beauties were placed in front of him, he wouldn't even bat an eyelid. However, this unconscious woman in front of him, even if his state of mind was a giant, he couldn't help but feel a sense of amazement. His state of mind, which was like a 1,000-year-old withered tree, couldn't help but ripple. Chapter 7. This white-clothed girl looked to be in her 20s, and was extremely beautiful. To Qin Feng, who was an old monster who had gone through a period of mental instability, there was a limit to a woman's beauty. Although they looked different, they were all as beautiful as fairies, and their beauty could topple cities. Apart from these, the only thing that could truly distinguish a woman's beauty was her temperament. She could be graceful and dignified, noble and charming, pure and elegant, cold as ice and snow, knowledgeable, wise and elegant, generous and calm, seductive and charming. Temperament was the dividing line between a top beauty and an ordinary beauty. No matter how beautiful a woman was, if she did not have temperament, she could not be considered a top beauty. If she only had temperament and no appearance, she could not be considered a top beauty. She could not be praised as a beauty that could topple cities. The girl in front of him was definitely worthy of such a title. At first glance, she was delicate and pitiful, but at second glance, she was cold and elegant like ice and snow, and at third glance, she was dignified and elegant. Not only did she have the elegance of a noble lady, but she also had the charm of a mature woman. She also had the tyranny and strength of a queen. The white-clothed girl seemed to be seriously injured, and a purple light was faintly discernible between her eyebrows. It should be a strange energy that was causing trouble in her body. This girl was at least at the meridian's condensation stage. Qin Feng's eyesight was outstanding, and he was confident that he had not seen wrongly. This white-clothed girl should have been attacked by an extremely strange energy. This energy seemed to be just and honorable, vast and mighty, as if it was the source of light, giving birth to the power of light. However, this seemingly vast and bright energy was constantly eroding this girl's life force. It was barbaric and tyrannical, destroying the girl's meridians. Even if this girl's cultivation was profound, and she could temporarily suppress it, but after a long time she would definitely die. Qin Feng stroked his smooth chin, his eyes thoughtful. If he did not see wrongly, this girl should have been hit by the great sun luminous purple cloud. Derived from the great sun luminous purple cloud. Great sun luminous purple cloud was a symbol that all the experts under the command of the Great Sunlight Temple had. The Great Sunlight Temple was a powerful force during the Golden Era, but later on, during the chaos of the Golden Era, it was torn apart. As for the reason, no one knew. He only knew that it might be an internal struggle for power. However, at the beginning of the Golden Age, this organization was still an extremely powerful colossus. It reigned supreme and gathered many zealous radiant saint guards. The great sun-bright purple cloud was one of the many powerful light attribute cultivation techniques of the Great Sunlight Temple. It was a true martial-level light attribute cultivation technique. Attribute was a mysterious strength that would only be born after reaching the 9th stage of the divine transformation. It belonged to a pulse condensation powerhouse. In order to become a pulse condensation powerhouse, one had to comprehend the power of the world's attribute. In Qin Feng's previous life, after reaching the 9th level of the God transformation stage, the attribute he comprehended was the power of thunder and lightning, and what he cultivated was thunder true power. Lightning true power was the most tyrannical, and was one of the few rare and powerful attribute. In terms of attack power, lightning attribute true power was incomparable to other attribute. The light attribute belongs to one of the strongest attribute. Once struck by the light attribute true power, it is usually very hard to get rid of, because the light attribute has the tyrannical power to purify everything. If it is not of the same kind as me, it will be purified. Once struck by the light attribute true power, apart from a few precious elixirs that could neutralize it, it would either be directly dispelled by a powerful force, or it would be completely purified by the light attribute true power, turning into a pile of ash. There were actually very few light attribute powerhouses, apart from the Great Sunlight Temple's secret technique that could increase the chances of comprehending the light attribute. there were very few light attribute powerhouses in the other organizations. Most of them were at the 9th stage of the martial path. They comprehended the ordinary power of the 5 elements, followed by the mutated power. Powerful power was extremely rare, and supreme power was the rarest. The great sun-bright purple cloud carried an extremely rare purple intent. Normally, after being struck, a purple cloud would appear between one's eyebrows. If a person struck by the great sun-bright purple cloud didn't have the special antidote of the great sunlight temple, they would be dead for sure. Especially when Qin Feng felt a vast amount of light intent from the great sun-bright purple cloud in this woman's body. Could completely purify the world. It was obvious that the person who struck her was a powerhouse with extremely high attainments in the path of light. If it was in the past, with the old monster's temperament, he would definitely hide as far away as he could, even if this woman was very beautiful. Especially now when he didn't even have the power to protect himself. However, he was currently in need of a target to steal her primordial Yin. This woman's martial path was very strong. Although he didn't know if she was a virgin, but for most martial path powerhouses, especially female martial path powerhouses, their primordial Yin was not something an ordinary woman could compare to. Am I a beast or am I worse than a beast? This question only went through Qin Feng's mind once before he made a decision. As for what decision he made, it was written clearly on his face. On the left, it was written "Take advantage of the situation," and on the right, "I am a beast. Don't blame me when you wake up. This is the only way to save your life. I save your life, and you help me get rid of the trash label. It's mutually beneficial. It should be a very fair deal," he muttered. Rolling up his sleeves, he looked up and found a dry cave far away from the waterfall. This cave was originally a bear's den, but it was abandoned and covered with spider webs. He simply cleaned it up. Looking at the white-clothed woman's beautiful appearance, his eyes became slightly hot, and he immediately rushed forward. After a long time, Qin Feng finally stabilized his mind that was on the verge of collapse. His eyes became clear again, and he closed his eyes. After eliminating all distracting thoughts, he opened his eyes. This time, the heat in his eyes slightly receded. He took out the profound yang ginseng that he had already washed and swallowed it like a radish. As he finished eating, he intuitively felt a warm and cool aura spread out from his abdomen and went straight to his heart. The time is ripe. Qin Feng's eyes lit up, and he gradually began to operate the nameless secret technique. A faint suction force began to appear from his body, and a cold aura gradually flowed out from the woman's body, entering his 4 limbs. Unexpectedly, the primordial Yin in the woman's body was thicker than he had imagined. As the nameless secret technique was operated, a majestic cool aura flowed from the woman's body into his meridians like a long river. The cool aura entered his body, and immediately began to circulate along his meridians. Strands of Yin Qi began to assimilate the 3 Yin cold Qi in his body like a long river. The 3 Yin cold Qi that was blocking his meridians like a rock began to dissolve like ice. It was as if a glacier had encountered flowing water. His meridians began to open up, and there was a bit of warm yang qi protecting his heart meridians, preventing the flowing yin qi from attacking his heart. If there were no accidents, this process would be completed very quickly. At that time, Qin Feng would be able to officially begin his martial cultivation. However, at this time, a strange change began. As part of the primordial yin qi in the woman's body began to circulate, gradually, a trace of the tyrannical great sunlight purple qi in her body also rushed over. A tearing pain appeared in his meridians. The meridians that had not been tempered before could not withstand such tyrannical light true power. Chapter 8. The light true power surged in. The light true power's texture was like steel. To a martial artist who had not entered the Meridian's realm, even a trace of true power could tear apart their weak body. But Qin Feng was a sly old fox. Before he collected the primordial Yin, he had already predicted this situation. Light true power and darkness true power were notoriously hard to deal with. They were not like the basic 5 elements which had countless methods to eliminate them. Light true power was tyrannical, darkness true power was strange. In this era, there were very few ways to eliminate these 2 types of true power secret techniques, and most of them were secrets that were kept secret by the major powers. Extremely precious. But to Qin Feng, this was not a difficult problem. In the millions of years of evolution, against the corrosive properties of the 2 types of true power, light and darkness, countless geniuses had researched all sorts of methods to counter it. In his mind, there were more than 10 methods that were easier to use. Qin Feng had already chosen one of the secret methods, the primal chaos light and darkness seal. This was a precious ancient method that was specially developed to counter the light and darkness true power. Its specialty was that it was stable. It could condense the light and darkness seal in the body. It could completely and steadily seal the destructive power of the light and darkness true power, preventing the life from being corroded. If he could comprehend the light and darkness true power in the future, he could even turn the light and darkness true power in the seal into his own. But he did not have any cultivation at the moment, so it was troublesome. Qin Feng's eyes flashed. He turned to the beautiful woman under him, and his eyes revealed a trace of a smile. "Let me borrow your cultivation." He formed a seal with both hands and struck out a strange seal. A violent suction force was born from his body. The owner of the body could not help but groan, and the qi in her body was sucked out like a river. A turbulent current surged, like the water of the sea, clear and limpid. It was as if he could hear countless springs gurgling in his ears. 5 elements, Azure Sea True Power. Qin Feng laughed lightly. The Azure Sea True Power was one of the stronger water-attributed true power. This Azure Sea True Power won in its vastness and turbulence. He formed a hand seal, and it was unknown what kind of mystical hand seal it was, but it was able to control the true power for a short period of time, transforming it into a heaven-earth mist-dew net, enveloping the endless light true power, turning it into a ball, and wrapping it around his dantian. Humph! A muffled groan sounded out as crystalline beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, and his gaze turned fierce. His hand seals changed once more, and it actually faintly shook space as he linked up with that wisp of primeval aura that had remained motionless since the ancient times. The strand of primordial qi descended, instantly transforming into light and darkness, black and white, forming 2 runes that emitted an ancient and boundless qi. One represented light, the other represented darkness, enveloping the light true power. The black and white brilliance blossomed at the same time, transforming into a hexagonal black and white crystal in the middle of the dantian. The black and white crystal transformed into a vortex, and an endless amount of true power of light was absorbed. The crystal went from the size of a grain of rice to the size of a soybean. It was bright and resplendent and extremely gentle. Following the absorption of the light true power by Qin Feng, the woman's Azure Sea true power that was originally suppressed started to circulate on its own. A surging qi that was like the Azure Sea seemed to awaken from its slumber. Success! At the same time, Qin Feng's body shook. It was as if all the burdens on his back had disappeared. For a moment, his body felt light and free. It was as if he was a divine weapon that had been pulled out of rust. He felt comfortable all over. The curse of being a trash was completely broken, and his body's aptitude was completely restored. In his excitement, he looked at the remaining beautiful woman. He could not help but feel his heart heat up. The 3-yin absolute physique disappeared, and with his worries gone, he took advantage of his excitement and displayed all his skills. However, Qin Feng had just started to cultivate. His illness had faded, and his body was still weak. After a while, he was no match for the woman in white who was in high spirits. His entire body was drenched in sweat, and his limbs were weak. Very quickly, like a defeated rooster, he ran out of the cave. Not long after Qin Feng left, the woman in white slowly opened her pair of beautiful eyes. What kind of eyes were those? Calm as water, light as snow, sparkling and translucent. Very quickly, her eyebrows creased, as if she felt a trace of discomfort in her body. In the next moment, a terrifying killing intent instantly appeared in the cave. The temperature in the cave dropped drastically, and countless amounts of frost and snow appeared. Her gaze turned, and she discovered a line of crooked handwriting on the ground. The handwriting revealed a wave of unrestrained unruliness, but it also had an extremely overbearing qi. However, once she did, she almost fainted from anger. The great sun-purple qi in your body has already been sucked away by your husband. As for what's left, it's probably just a drop in the ocean for you. You don't have to look for your husband when you wake up. Your husband has left a jade pendant for you. If you're unlucky enough to get pregnant, please don't have an abortion. You can use this pendant to meet your husband in the future. If anyone dares to force you to have an abortion, when your husband finds out, I will definitely kill all of his or her blood relatives within 18 generations. I will cut him into pieces and make him die a horrible death. The person who left the message was even rambling on, using all sorts of excuses, threats and domineering threats, causing the white-robed woman to burn with rage. She was originally a calm and steady person with a peaceful heart. This was especially so because of the cultivation technique she cultivated, which caused her heart to be as calm as still water. However, at this moment, it was as if she was looking at a repulsive and despicable face. Your husband knows that your enemy is from the great sun lineage, and specially left behind a true martial secret technique to counter the light true power, to supply the enemy. Following that was a true martial secret technique, called the Great Light Motionless Seal Technique. The lady in white's anger was hard to quell, and her killing intent was hard to quell. Initially, she did not think much of it. With her identity, she had come in contact with countless secret techniques, but to be able to counter the light true power, this kind of powerful true power was something that could be counted with 5 hands. She did not believe the other party's flowery speech. Although she did not believe it, but she subconsciously took a look. Once she took a look, her anger could not help but stagnate. An extremely profound text flowed through her mind like water. Although she did not cultivate it, but the lady in white's face changed. Her intuition told her that this so-called Great Light Motionless Seal technique truly had the miraculous effect of countering the light true power. The other party was not lying. If this technique was leaked out, it would definitely cause a huge commotion in the Spirit Sea continent. It would probably cause many strong martial artists who cultivated the light true power to panic. As a powerful force, the light true power actually had a counter. This would cause countless chain reactions. If she, who had obtained this technique, brought it back and contributed it to the sect, she would definitely receive unimaginable benefits, and the good days of the great Sunlight Temple would most likely come to an end. Who exactly is this perverted thief? To be able to casually toss out such a technique, he is definitely not an ordinary person. Could he be one of the inheritors of the ancient hidden families? Or perhaps he is the reincarnation of an ancient saint. The lady in white's expression was grave. Feeling the discomfort in her body, her beautiful face flashed with a trace of terrifying coldness. Despicable perverted thief, I don't care who you are. To dare to defile this madam's innocence, this madam will definitely find you and cut you into pieces. Chapter 9. It was almost dusk when he returned to Mount Chiang. The rose-red clouds in the sky seemed to have bloomed beside his feet, dyeing the foothills red. The mountain breeze blew, bringing with it the faint fragrance of food. The cheerful sounds of children chasing each other could be heard from the manor located on the mountainside. Lights began to be lit. "Young master, you're back." The little handmaiden leaned against the door, looking cold and cheerful. She looked down at the mountain path from time to time. When she saw the familiar figure, she could not help but jump up and run towards him from afar. A red figure approached him, bringing with it an elegant fragrance. Qin Feng took advantage of the opportunity to catch the light and delicate body. "Silly girl." Qin Feng felt a long-lost warmth as he caressed the girl's soft black hair. It was the feeling of someone caring for him. He did not know how many nights he had not felt this way. As time passed, the warmth in front of him was like a hazy dream, like a flower in the water or the moon in the mirror. "Young master, are you all right? The 6th young master's men came to look for you at noon. I'm afraid they have already found out?" The little handmaiden's bright eyes scanned Qin Feng up and down, full of anxiety and worry. "6th young master Qin Myun." Qin Feng was taken aback. His eyes were filled with thoughts as he stared at the pair of anxious and worried eyes. "Don't worry, 6th young master can't do anything to me." "But, will he report it to the master?" The little handmaiden said worriedly. "Don't worry, it's just 2 dogs. They don't belong to my family. Do you think this young master will tie them up? Their legs are on their own. If they get lost, how can they blame this young master?" Qin Feng's eyes flashed with a touch of coldness. He waved his hand, his eyes a little deep. "Besides, that old man can't wait to kill me immediately. It doesn't matter if he has an excuse or not. He now sees me as a thorn in his side, a thorn in his flesh. As for 6th young master, don't worry. This man is ambitious, but he doesn't have the talent to match his ambition. In my eyes, he is just a block in front of me. Sooner or later, I will trample him underfoot." There are 5 branches of the Qin family. The first branch is Qin Yaoguang, the second branch is Qin Yaoxian, the third branch is Qin Yaowu, the fourth branch is Qin Yaorong, and the fifth branch is my father Qin Zhan. Among the 5 branches, the second branch is the weakest, and the several legitimate sons are mediocre. The fourth branch has a genius girl, Qin Yuer, but unfortunately she is a girl. The second branch, and the second branch, the second branch, and the second branch, and the second branch, and the second branch, and the second branch. The most powerful ones are the first branch and the third branch. Qin Yaoguang has 2 sons, Qin Shu, the first young master of the Qin family, and Qin Feng, the 7th young master. Qin Shu is the oldest. He is usually quiet and obedient. His aptitude is ordinary, and he is suppressed by his own brother, Qin Feng. The third branch has 4 sons. The 11th young master is young and weak, so he is not included in the list of threat. The 4th young master, Qin Mubing, is in charge of the family's caravan. He is also a talent and is now doing well. The 5th young master, Qin Muhan, is a playboy who only knows how to walk dogs and play with bird. He bullies the weak and fawns on those in power. The 6th young master, Qin Muyun, is arrogant and ambitious. Although I think he is mediocre, he is definitely not a kind person. Just wait and see. Seeing that the first branch and the Yu family are going to be united by marriage, they will never let it go. Young master, you are saying that once the first branch and the Yu family are united by marriage, their strength will definitely increase greatly, and they will completely stabilize their position as the next heir of the Qin family. The third branch will never watch the first branch's strength increase greatly. They will become the next heir of the Qin family. The little maid was extremely intelligent and understood immediately. That's right, just wait and see. The third branch will not sit back and watch the first branch reap the benefits. The elders of the third branch have always thought that I am a good-for-nothing, and can be controlled at any time. Even if they know that I have some secret on me, they will only secretly investigate, with the intention of monopolizing it. At least before the big wedding, they will ensure that this young master will not be secretly eradicated by the people of the first branch. He still needs to borrow my strength to break the marriage plan between the first branch and the Yu family. Qin Feng's eyes flashed with all kinds of calculations. But the family head will not let you go. Now the family head seems to be on the side of the first branch. The little maid said worriedly. Don't worry, I know that the patriarch is bent on sacrificing me, Qin Feng, to help his good grandson, Qin Feng. However, I, Qin Feng, am also not easy to deal with. Now that young master's aptitude has changed, he can cultivate. As long as he cultivates a little, he will have the power to protect himself. Moreover, I also know some shocking secret. As long as he completely digests these secrets, he will definitely be able to soar into the sky and completely break away from their control. At that time, a mere upper river town's Qin family will be nothing. With a raise of my hand, I will be able to exterminate that heartless old beast. Looking at this thin and weak little maid, he couldn't help but reveal a look of pity. If it were the personal maids of other branches, which one of them wouldn't be tender and tender, eat and drink well, and receive a considerable monthly salary every month? But the little maid, Hong Lian, had suffered a lot with him. Not only did she not receive a monthly salary, but she also had to weave cloth day and night to support this waste young master. Now, she didn't have the appearance of a young girl at the prime of her life. Except for her tall figure, her skin was pale and her hair was dry, as if it had lost its moisture. If it wasn't for her tall figure and early puberty, it was almost impossible to tell that she had the appearance of a young girl. Young master, you mean you can cultivate now? The little maid opened her small mouth wide. Her attention was completely attracted by the words "can cultivate." Her eyes were filled with shock and excitement. Of course, young master has now completely taken off the label of waste. Just you wait, on the 3rd of March, there is only 1 month left until the wedding of the 7th young master of the Qin clan and the pearl of the Yu clan. This young master will definitely give them a big surprise. Qin Feng's every movement revealed a sense of confidence. After saying that, he looked at the excited little maid with bright eyes, as if she could cultivate by herself, and said, Hong Lian, it's been hard on you these past few years. When this young master was in dire straits, you were the only one who didn't abandon him. Young master will remember your good. In the future, no matter how far this young master can go, I will never abandon you. Young master, the little maid's eyes were a little red. She couldn't help but be moved. Her beautiful face was rosy, like the red clouds. Hearing these words, it was warm and sweet. In the short and shabby courtyard, an oil lamp emitted a dim yellow light. The little maid carefully prepared dinner. There were a few dishes of wild vegetables and a bowl of porridge. Although it wasn't sumptuous, it was very warm. After dinner, Qin Feng came to the courtyard alone. Countless secret techniques revolved in his mind. There were 9 levels of the martial path. The first level was muscle refining, the second level was bone forging, the third level was blood changing, the fourth level was aura, the fifth level was inner strengthening, the sixth level was divine power, the seventh level was true chi, the eighth level was liquid transformation, and the ninth level was god transformation. The first 3 levels were muscle, bone, and skin. The middle 3 levels were essence, energy, and spirit. The last 3 levels were one with the spirit. To comprehend the changes of one with the spirit, one needed opportunities. One needed to comprehend the power of heaven and earth, condense an attribute seed, and nurture an independent space in the Dantian. If one could become a pulse condensation stage cultivator, all the power and glory would be at their fingertips. Their position would be comparable to that of nobility. Any country would give you an extremely high noble title to win you over. Pulse condensation stage cultivators had all kinds of incredible abilities. flying in the air, spitting thunder and lightning, controlling fire and water, the evolution of light and darkness, and even the change of time and space. These were all the methods of pulse condensation stage cultivators. The power derived from the various attributes of true qi was beyond the imagination of mortals. This was a path that led directly to the god and devil realm. Qin Feng had countless secret techniques in his mind. However, there were not many that were suitable for the 9 layers of the martial path. Although the 9 heavens Thunder Emperor scripture was powerful, it could only be cultivated after the pulse condensation stage. The Qin clan had a few suitable fist techniques. The Wild Wind Bone Forging Fist, the Wind Roar Closed Aperture Technique, and the Clear Wind Spirit Refining Pillar were all top-quality cultivation techniques. They were enough to break the tendons, refine the bones, and change the blood. In the end, Qin Feng decided to cultivate the Qin clan's muscle-refining bone forging technique. First, it was to conceal his identity. Second, the Qin clan's cultivation techniques were top-quality foundation establishment technique. Although they could only be said to be top quality, it was not impossible to cultivate them. If he could fix some of the flaws in the cultivation techniques, perhaps the results would be even better. As for carelessly changing the cultivation techniques, this was not a problem for Qin Feng, who had lived for thousands of years and had read countless secret techniques. After millions of years of martial arts evolution, countless mysterious martial arts mysteries gathered in his mind. At this moment, the flower of civilization had already appeared in his mind. It was not an exaggeration to say that this old devil was an intelligent person. How could a mere foundation establishment technique be difficult for him? If it wasn't for the lack of time, he could have even created his own foundation establishment technique. In just one night, he had refined the Qin Feng Spirit Refining Pillar out of the 3 technique. After modifying it, the cultivation speed of this technique was 1.5 times faster than the original. If this speed was spread out, it would definitely cause many people's eyes to pop out. The next day, early in the morning, Qin Feng began his first cultivation of the 9 layers of the martial path in the courtyard. His eyes were as calm as water and his mind was steady. His legs were like plum blossoms as he stood high up on a wooden stake in the courtyard. He stretched out his arms and assumed a strange posture. His muscles and bones were stretched out like a cool breeze blocking the river. He had practiced this posture countless times in his mind. Cultivating it was incomparably natural and did not have any difficulty. Slowly, a gentle force came from his legs. A numb feeling traveled along his bones and flowed throughout his body. This force was very unfamiliar, but as time passed, it slowly seeped into his bones and organs from his muscles. Finally, it became one with his divine intent, allowing him to freely control his body. Again and again, he practiced and channeled his force. Unknowingly, Qin Feng entered a mysterious realm. It was as if he was standing on a green plain. As the cool breeze blew, his body became transparent, revealing a dragon that connected all of his bones. This was his muscles and bones. A cool breeze blew by, bringing with it a hint of coolness. It seemed to blow into his bones, moisturizing his muscles and bones, polishing this huge dragon. The dragon of muscles and bones moved rhythmically in the wind, dancing with the wind. This feeling was very strange and also very familiar. It was as if the cool breeze was his bones, the heaven and earth were his body, and the mountains and valleys were his orifices. He was like a baby that had returned to his mother's body. He seemed to have comprehended the true meaning of the spirit refining pillar at this moment. He cultivated the spirit of cool breeze. His muscles and bones were like the wind, trembling according to a mysterious rhythm. His blood and qi flowed faster, and black impurities came out from his pores. It was very smelly and disgusting. At the same time, his originally pale face slowly became rosy. His original body was thin and weak, like a sick person. Now, he still looked thin and weak, but with a trace of vigor and elegance, as if he had a charm. Although there was no change in his figure, the strange feeling was that he was not the same person. Power, there was the feeling of power. The power of his muscles and bones was revealed. The late stage of the first layer of the martial path. Chapter 10. At the first heavenly layer of the martial path, the physical body had the strength to pull 3 stone bowstrings. The strength of 1 stone was about 4 June, and the strength of 3 stones was about 12 June. The strength of 1 stone was about 200 Jin. And this was just the beginning. If he could complete the first 3 layers of the martial path, he could even have the brute strength of 1,000 Jin. The strength of 1,000 Jin, how terrifying was that? It could pull out an inverted willow in the air and carry a huge elephant. If it was condensed and exploded, it could break 100 times refined iron with bare hand. Qin Feng was completely immersed in the cultivation of the spirit-refining pillar. In the next few days, he used cultivation to replace everything else. If it was not for the fact that he needed to eat and drink from time to time to replenish his essence qi and sleep to recover his energy, he would have devoted himself to it. His essence, qi, and spirit seemed to have become one with the wind, blending with the wind and the moon as he comprehended the essence of the spirit-refining pillar. He needed to completely control the instincts of this body and perfectly control the cultivation of the first heavenly layer of the martial path. He felt that the dragon's tendons and bones in his body seemed to have gained a divine charm during this process, turning into a huge dragon that could fly freely in the breeze. It became one with the god of cool breeze, becoming more and more flexible with each passing day. It was undergoing a subtle transformation. Rumble. Gale bone-forging fist. Qin Feng punched out. His palm was like a clear ripple, and it was actually like layers upon layers of violent wind. A gust of violent wind wrapped around him, and with a bang, he slammed into the ancient pagoda tree in the courtyard. Gotcha! What was shocking was that the pagoda tree, which needed 2 or 3 people to wrap around, had a big hole in it. Peak late-stage first firmament of the martial path. Qin Feng's face showed a trace of dissatisfaction. In 3 days, he had recovered from a trash with no cultivation base to the peak of the first firmament of the martial path. In any other place, he would be worthy of being called a genius. However, in Qin Feng's view, this speed was still a bit slow. Too slow, too slow. This cultivation speed is like a tortoise crawling. I've already comprehended the spirit intent of the breeze spirit-refining pillar and seen through all the mysteries within. The bottleneck of this cultivation method has been completely flattened. Logically speaking, I should be able to cultivate to the second heavenly layer in 3 days and break through to the third heavenly layer in 10 to 15 days. It's so hateful that this body of mine was forcefully cultivated by that old beast of the Qin family into an extinct body. Although the Yin poison has been removed, my body has been weak for a long time and can't be given any strong medicine. He could only take it slow and cook it with a slow fire, replenish the yuan qi that has been lost over the years and strengthen the foundation. Qin Feng frowned, looking a little distressed. Suddenly, a light flashed in his eyes as he thought to himself, "No, this speed is too slow. I have to go to the ruins and obtain the Xuanwu divine pill to completely change my aptitude and increase my cultivation speed. It's just that the 6 Cauldrons ancient temple is located in the periphery of the desolate mountain range. There are many fierce beasts hiding in the desolate mountain range, and there are often fierce beasts wandering around the periphery. It's impossible for a first heavenly layer of the martial path to rush in. It's only a matter of time before I can try. Young master, I've returned. According to your request, I went to the mountains to collect many herbs. From afar, the little maid came back with a basket of herbs. There was a pile of herbs in the basket. There were ground ginseng, Solomon's seal, green hemp, gold silver grass, and so on. But young master, why did you collect so many herbs? Also, this purple grass is a highly poisonous herb. You can't use it casually, the little maid asked doubtfully. After saying that, she casually picked up a strange herb with light purple sword-shaped leaves that emitted a fishy smell. Don't worry, your young master has read countless medical books and is proficient in medical theory and pharmacology. In this world, there are very few people who dare to say that they are better than your young master in this aspect. Qin Feng's face was full of confidence. This sentence was not false. He was an old monster of 1,000 years, only one step away from apotheosis. In order to break through, he had read countless secret books and classics. He had even experimented on enemies and cultivated countless strange creatures. He himself was an old antique. Medical theory and pharmacology were just things he learned to pass the time of 1,000 years. Although he didn't deliberately learn it, it didn't mean that he wasn't proficient in it. If a pig could survive 1,000 years, it would become an old monster, not to mention an old devil who was half a step away from apotheosis. His strongest point was still his attainments in Xian formations and restrictions. The little handmaiden was confused. She didn't know where her young master's confidence came from. However, in the past few days, she also discovered that although she didn't know why her young master knew so much, what he said was right every time. Involuntarily, she had become accustomed to believing her young master. Qin Feng casually rubbed the little maid's long hair and said with a smile as the little maid pouted coquettishly. Although this young master's body has been cleansed of the Yin poison, it is still very weak and can't bear to use it. I need to use medicinal decoctions concocted with medicinal herbs to bathe externally and then take them orally. These medicinal decoctions are all secret methods that are hard to buy with money. The medicinal properties are gentle and can strengthen the muscles and bones. These past few days, after drinking medicinal decoctions every day, my body has improved a lot. I think that in another 10 days or half a month, I should be able to completely nurse this body back to health. After sending the little maid away, Qin Feng continued to immerse himself in the world of cultivation. Gale Bone Forging Fist was the most basic technique of the Qin clan. It was only a basic technique of the human martial realm and looked very ordinary. However, it was rare to see someone who could deshang this fist technique. The power of a technique didn't depend on the user's level. Although low-level techniques did have some limitations, it was still the cultivator who could bring out the power of the technique. For an extremely ordinary technique, as long as the cultivator could comprehend its essence and master it, they would be able to bring out an incredible power. Gale Bone Forging Fist was focused on the power of the gale. The person was like the wind, easily like the gale between heaven and earth, easily destroying everything, sweeping away thousands of soldiers and destroying everything. On the tree stump, Qin Feng's fist technique gradually changed. He was already very proficient in this fist technique, and as he practiced it over and over again, he gradually comprehended a trace of the concept of the gale. Slowly, as the fist technique was blasted out, a hot wind rose around his body. This hot wind seemed to be spurting out from the 48,000 pores on his body. As his chest violently rose and fell, the wind became stronger and stronger. When the last fist was blasted out, it was as if a gale filled the sky and a destructive power was hidden within it. Kacha kacha! Abruptly, the bones in Qin Feng's body trembled violently, akin to the chimes of an ancient palace. There was actually an indescribable rhythm to it, as though there was a type of energy hidden within the rhythm. Rumble! As the bones changed, the fist technique changed, and it began to stir the surrounding air. The disorderly and scattered air seemed to be kneaded into a ball, forming a gale that was like an air cannonball. Rumble! Just at this moment, Qin Feng suddenly changed from the high-speed punching state to extreme calmness. A fist blasted out like lightning, and a trace of green could be seen on his fist and palm. His palm blasted out on the remaining half of the ancient pagoda tree in the center of the courtyard. Bang! A terrifying blast of energy wrapped in wood splinters exploded. The little handmaiden was dumbstruck. The enormous force had actually punched through the tree trunk that would take 3 people to wrap their arms around. With a rumble, the ancient pagoda tree couldn't withstand the torment anymore. It fell down with a bang and hit the ground, making a rumbling sound. The peak of the late stage of the first heaven of martial arts. The tendons are like the full moon and the power is released from the 5 fingers. When the power is imprinted on the rock, it can reach up to 3 feet. Standing quietly on the wooden stake, Qin Feng's chest heaved up and down. The information about the late stage of the first heaven of martial arts flashed through his mind. At this moment, he broke a 100-year-old pagoda tree with one punch. His strength was much stronger than that of the late stage of the first heaven of martial arts. This was not a strength that an ordinary first heaven of martial arts could possess. If he gathered the power in his 5 fingers, he could easily break through a 3-foot stone. After dashang with the breeze spirit-refining pillar, he once again practiced the gale bone-refining fist to dashang. Taking this opportunity, he broke through to the peak of the late stage of the first heaven of martial arts. With his current cultivation, he had closed the gap between him and the other disciples of the Qin family. In 3 days, he had completed the cultivation of the others that took nearly 10 years. This speed was enough to make everyone stunned. However, in Qin Feng's opinion, all this was normal. Cultivation focused on comprehension. As long as he understood the essence of these cultivation methods, he could achieve twice the result with half the effort and shorten the cultivation process. The reason why the ordinary disciples had to spend so much time was that they needed to practice and try. Only through all these attempts could they comprehend the essence of the fist technique. However, he was different. He had already thoroughly understood the essence of these fist techniques and even comprehended the essence after dashang. It was naturally easy for him to cultivate. The only thing that limited him was the flaw in his aptitude. At present, it seemed that the trip to the 6 Cauldrons ancient temple was imminent. 10 days later, Qin Feng's foundation was completely stabilized. He no longer suppressed himself and officially broke through to the late stage of the second heaven of martial arts. His strength increased greatly. After exhorting a few words with Hong Lian, he left the small courtyard and walked towards the periphery of the barbaric mountains. An hour after Qin Feng left, a certain sneaky figure who had been guarding outside the courtyard day and night and had witnessed Qin Feng's departure came to a secret place and secretly whispered something to the person who had been waiting here for a long time. Very soon, this person's eyes lit up. With a call, a few powerful guards suddenly appeared in the surroundings. These people followed the direction Qin Feng left in and quietly followed him. Chapter 11. At 5th young Master Qin Muhan's place, Qin Muhan was flirting with a pretty servant girl. The voice of the girl playing in the courtyard was soft and charming, with a hint of charm. As the son of a concubine from the 3rd branch, although he had the title of young master, in reality, it was only in name. The reason was because of the difference between the direct line and the concubine. What was the direct line of descent? The direct line of descent was the children of the main wife, while the concubine's children were usually born of concubines. The concubine's children had a low status and were looked down upon. Most of them were not put in important positions. Even if they had outstanding aptitudes, they could only be reduced to the lackeys of the direct line of descent. On the other hand, the direct line of descent enjoyed the best treatment since birth. The family's inherited secret techniques were fully open to them, and endless resources poured into them. They could easily obtain the achievements that the collateral descendants had worked hard for a long time. The third branch had 3 sons. 2 of them were the direct line of descent: 4th young Master Qin Mubing and 6th young Master Qin Moon. 5th young Master Qin Muhan was the son of a concubine. In fact, 5th young Master Qin Muhan hated his brothers from the bottom of his heart. This hatred had a long history, and it was like an unbreakable curse in the Qin family's bloodline. The source of this hatred was the complicated struggle between the direct line of descent and the collateral descendants. In the courtyard, a figure hurriedly walked over. 5th young master, there's movement in front of 6th young master's door. Qin Muhan threw away the beautiful girl in his arms and suddenly stood up. He ignored the girl's resentful and coquettish gaze and said in a hurried tone, "Tell me, did 6th young master get some benefits again? Did father send someone to give him the bone-tempering pill again? I hate father for being so biased. Am I not his biological son because I'm born of a concubine? Why is he treating me like this?" Qin Muhan's eyes revealed a trace of anger. His 5 fingers were like iron hooks as he grabbed the servant's collar, causing the servant to be unable to breathe. The bone-tempering pill was one of the essential pills for cultivators. When one just started cultivating, with the help of this pill, one could quickly temper one's bones, remove impurities in the body, and improve the quality of one's body. With a good body, one could achieve twice the results with half the effort when cultivating. The importance of the bone-tempering pill to cultivators was self-evident. Moreover, the bone-tempering pill was also very expensive in the market. It also cost 30 taels of gold. 30 to 40 taels of gold and 100 taels of silver. If one wasn't from a wealthy family, it would be difficult to buy one even if they sold their house and body. Qin Muhan's aptitude was average. At his age, it was the time for him to catch up. He needed this kind of medicinal pill. How could he not be angry when he heard that his father was giving medicinal pills to his brothers? And no, 5th young master, the master didn't give the 6th young master any bone-tempering pills. The servant stammered, his face red and trembling. Could it be the body-tempering pill? Qin Muhan's expression changed, and the anger in his eyes grew. That's not it either. The servant trembled in fear and waved his hands repeatedly. What's that? You bastard! Speak clearly! Qin Muhan glared at him as a cold aura surged from his body. The servant shuddered and hurriedly told him everything he knew in one breath. It's the 6th young master. The 6th young master went out with the 9th young master. He seems to have discovered the 9th young master's secret? 9th young master, could it be that Qin Feng, that trash, still have some secret? Qin Muhan threw the servant aside as a strange light flashed in his eyes. Wasn't he crippled by me? How did he recover so quickly? It seems that this Qin Feng really has some secret. No, I can't let the 6th young master monopolize all the benefits. Qin Muhan's face turned cold as he thought of his younger brother. Just as he was about to walk out of the door, he suddenly stopped. He muttered to himself, "Should I inform the 7th young master? Now that I've pledged my allegiance to the 7th young master, I can keep the 4th young master in check. Although the 6th young master doesn't have a trace of sincerity and only wants to get some benefits, the 7th young master's tyrannical strength is not something I can compare to. That little bastard, the 6th young master, is favored by my father. Every time my father secretly sends him pills and cultivation methods, he thinks that I don't know. Now, the 6th young master is already at the peak of the 2nd firmament of the martial path. He's only one step away from the 3rd firmament of the martial path. I can only rely on my own efforts. Although I deducted Qin Feng's monthly salary and temporarily gave him an extra set of bone-tempering pills, it's still very difficult for me to break through to the middle of the 2nd firmament of the martial path. I'm still far away from the 3rd firmament of the martial path. How can I fight the sixth young master, who is at the peak of the second firmament of the martial path? After a moment of hesitation, his eyes flashed as he pondered. No, I can't inform the seventh young master. The seventh young master is too powerful. I'm far from being his opponent. If he knows, even if there's a secret, I won't be able to get anything. It's better to inform the eldest young master, Qin Shu. His aptitude is average. Although he's at the third firmament of the martial path, he's not strong and has always been suppressed by the seventh young master. Although he seems to be diligent and sincere on the surface, I know that he must be resentful and depressed in his heart. If I join forces with him, it's enough to restrain the sixth young master. After we get the benefits, we can share them equally. Thinking of this, Qin Muhan's eyes lit up. He summoned 2 trustworthy servants and ordered, "There are many spies of the other young masters in front of our mansion. You 2 go out through the underground secret passage and immediately find the eldest young master. Tell him that I have something important to discuss with him, and ask him to come quickly. Remember, don't leak the news." "Yes, fifth young master." The 2 servants quickly walked into the house. Old ninth, I'd like to see what tricks you're playing. Is it like what the patriarch said, that Qin Zhan really has a secret for you? Whether you have a secret or not, it's all mine." Seeing the 2 servants leave, Qin Muhan muttered to himself with a sneer in his eyes. Another dog is following me." Less than a quarter of an hour after leaving the Qiang mountain range, Qin Feng found traces of someone following him. The old devil's mind was strange and cunning. Thinking of the last time he was followed, he knew in a moment that he was definitely being watched by someone. As for who it was easy to guess. It was either the Qin family head's men or one of the other young masters. In any case, no matter who it was, they were definitely up to no good. Although he didn't know why the other party was following him, Qin Feng had plenty of ways to get rid of them. He walked along the Qiang mountain range and came to the outer ring of the desolate mountain range. He began to walk around, specifically going to remote and difficult places. "Bastard, this trick again. You want to use the terrain to get rid of this young master? Dream on. Do you think this young master will fall for your trick twice in a row?" This time, this young master brought the scaled hounds. Behind him, Qin Muyan sneered. Behind him, several guards were leading a few strange small dog-type vicious beasts to sniff around. The scaled hounds were extremely ferocious small dog-type vicious beasts with sensitive noses and short limbs. They were extremely good at tracking. Most importantly, they were loyal and had slippery scales like snake scales all over their bodies. With a little training, they could be used to guard a house. "Young master, not good, the 9th young master is missing." Suddenly, a courageous guard cried out in alarm. Qin Muyan flew into a rage and looked up. Sure enough, Qin Feng was nowhere to be found in the vast mountain forest. He was flustered and exasperated as he scolded furiously. "A bunch of trash, don't you know how to chase?" "We can't." Several guards drooped their heads. Qin Muyan was so angry that he laughed. Just as he was about to ask why, very quickly, he heard a groaning sound. He turned his head and couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He saw a few scaled hounds moving up and down. He pointed blankly at the scaled hounds and asked, "What are these beasts doing?" "Mating." Several servants answered honestly. Qin Muyan flew into a rage. "Are your dog eyes blind? This young master asks you, why don't they mate normally? Why do they mate as soon as they come out to work?" The servants didn't say anything. They were also muttering in their hearts. These scaled hounds obviously hadn't entered the mating period yet, so why would they do this at this crucial time? Seeing that he had shaken off the group of people, Qin Feng turned to look at the forest and sneered. They thought that they could track his whereabouts with just the scaled hounds? That was simply wishful thinking. He had long been on guard against this move. Although he was wandering left and right in the mountain forest, In fact, he had taken advantage of the opportunity just now to spread a lust powder in the air of the forest. The fragrance of this medicine was very faint, and ordinary creatures couldn't smell it. However, the scaled hounds' noses were very sensitive. They could easily smell the fragrance and be stimulated, causing them to go into estrus. Chapter 12. In his previous life, Qin Feng had heard of the underground palace of the six-cauldron ancient temple before, but he had never been there. After millions of years, the world had changed and this place had long turned into a pile of ashes. Qin Feng could only search around the periphery according to the description in the rumors, intending to find some clues. He remembered the rumors that the six-cauldron ancient temple seemed to be in the depths of an ancient forest in the periphery of the desolate mountain range. This forest was very strange, and it was rich in ancient scholar trees. Ancient scholar trees were originally things that gathered yin qi. The forest where these trees gathered was definitely an extremely cold place with poisonous creatures and demons. There was a 100-year-old scholar tree in his courtyard. The extremely sinister 3-in-1 Qi array used this 100-year-old scholar tree as the array core to gather yin Qi and set it up. This kind of tree was seen by many as an ominous tree. Normally, it would be cut down if they saw it. It was very rare for it to grow into a forest. This was a very obvious clue. Qin Feng searched the forest for a day and a night before he found this strange and eerie scholar tree forest in front of him. This ancient scholar tree grew abnormally tall and thick. Its leaves reached to the sky, and even the yang qi in the sky couldn't descend. The forest was gloomy and fog lingered. These ancient trees were mostly curved, and their thick trunks were mostly like giant snake. When Qin Feng blew, it emitted a deep and gloomy whistle. In the quiet forest, it was eerie and terrifying. Looking up, the withered tree hole was actually like the face of a malicious spirit. It was pitch black, as if it wanted to devour living creatures. A chill rose from the bottom of his heart. The yin qi is dense. This place is not a good place. Qin Feng saw a few white skeletons in the forest. 100 steps away from the skeletons, there were a few rusty weapons. This place looked very ominous. His expression was slightly serious, but he still chose to walk in. His footwork was agile and elegant, but it gave people an illusion of power. It was as if his pores were filled with power. He was like a hunting shadow tearing through the thin fog, rushing straight in. It was as if he was the incarnation of power. Qin Feng had integrated the spirit-refining pillar into his footwork. With every step, he could even hear the sound of bones grinding. It was as if his bones were constantly vibrating and tempering his physique. He was improving all the time. The ape stretched out its arms, and a wave of energy was released. At this moment, he had completely mastered the power of square inch of the first heaven of the martial path. With a point of his finger, he could easily pierce through a 3-foot-thick stone wall. His tiger-fighting strength, which had entered the second celestial layer of the martial path, was also beginning to show itself. What was the tiger-fighting strength? It meant that one could easily kill a ferocious tiger or a hungry wolf with pure physical strength. If he broke through to the third sky of the martial path, he would have the terrifying strength to throw an elephant. He would be able to carry an elephant on his shoulder. That was the symbol of his muscles, bones, and skin being tempered to the extreme. As he walked through the forest, his aura fluctuated. Occasionally, there would be a soul-stirring explosion around him. It was like a ferocious beast that was rampaging. The aura around him was vigorous and sharp, releasing a powerful destructive nature. Even a ferocious tiger would flee upon seeing him. Awo! Suddenly, a wolf howl came from the depths of the forest. The fast-moving figure instantly froze like a gust of wind. It seemed to hesitate for a moment, and then quickly swept forward like a bolt of lightning. After a while, Many gray wolves in the forest appeared in Qin Feng's field of vision. Awo! Seeing a stranger appear, a giant wolf immediately howled. In an instant, the forest was filled with murderous intent. One by one, the giant wolves stood up. Their bodies were the size of calves, and their eerie green eyes flickered with greed and cruelty. A wolf pack! Qin Feng's expression changed abruptly. The hungry wolves in the mountains were the most terrifying. Each of them had a rumbling stomach and were incomparably ferocious. A single hungry wolf was not scary, but once it encountered a wolf pack, even a ferocious tiger, the king of the forest would have to flee. Without giving Qin Feng much time to think, the alpha wolf in the lead had already let out an urgent howl due to its hunger. Following that, 3 wolf howls resounded through the forest. The wolf pack had begun to hunt. A hungry wolf that was only skin and bones rushed in front of all the giant wolves. The excited wolf seemed to have seen fresh blood food. It opened its bloody mouth and fiercely pounced. A group of beasts, wanting to find an ancestor to have a sumptuous meal? I'll break your teeth. Qin Feng clenched his fist. There was no fear on his face. Instead, he laughed nastily and rushed toward the wolf pack. Gale bone forging fist. A brilliant force burst forth from his body. Like a rampaging bull, his long arms turned into iron palms. With a boom, he grabbed the first hungry wolf that rushed over and actually slapped the giant wolf away. The giant wolf landed on the mountain rocks with a loud crash, and bright red blood splashed out. The combination of blood and qi seemed to have stimulated the pack of hungry wolves. Wolf howls resounded through the forest. Figures the size of calves dashed forward one after another, breaking through the obstruction of the leaves and pouncing toward their prey. There were wolf shadows in all directions. Murderous intent surged like a torrent. Qin Feng laughed wildly. Good beasts, you really think I'm a pushover? The Gale bone forging fist was unleashed with all his strength. With a punch, a giant wolf that was close to him was blown away. With a twist of his waist, he used both his hands and feet with a deep force. The pack of wolves that rushed over like a torrent turned into cannonballs in the terrifying fist shadows. They fell to the ground in a mess, and the howls were incessant. The power of killing tigers and wolves in the second sky of martial arts was used incisively and vividly by Qin Feng. His body movement and footwork were in accordance with the charm of the wind. His palm and fist were deep and powerful, like a gale sweeping away the fallen leaves. The terrifying strength was enough to destroy the trunks of bowl-sized trees. The giant wolves were blown away one by one. The power of killing tigers and wolves was used to the extreme by him. With each punch, his fist skills seemed to have gradually evolved. It was as if all the skills had returned to the origin. It was completely integrated into his body and became his own. He had reached the highest realm where he could move at will. Often, a casual punch was surging with power. It had the power that the giant wolves could not match. He could kill a hungry wolf the size of a calf with a bare hand. Bang, bang, bang. A bloody storm swept through the forest. He was like a ferocious beast in human form as he went against the current and slaughtered his way into the pack of wolves. Everywhere he passed, he destroyed everything in his path. A ferocious aura surrounded him, making him look like a peerless demon. The hungry wolves were fierce and cruel, but he was even more ferocious and overbearing. The terrifying wolf pack was scattered by him alone, and the wolf pack was defeated by him. Gradually, some of the giant wolves began to feel afraid and began to flee. As the Wolf King let out a mournful and unwilling howl, all of the giant wolves collapsed and fled back into the forest among the corpses of nearly 100 gray wolves. Whoosh! Qin Feng's chest violently rose and fell like a bellows. His breathing was heavy and powerful. His whole body was sweating profusely. A steaming steam was emitted from his pores. The excitement in his eyes was almost unconcealable. Delightful, really delightful. With the power of the second sky of the martial path, He killed a pack of wolves and forced the hungry wolves to retreat. Such a carefree and unrestrained battle seemed to make Qin Feng return to the bloody and illustrious years when he fought with people, with the earth, and with the heavens. The qi and blood in his body were boiling, surging with the battle. It nourished his muscles and bones, making them thicker and tougher. He was not far from the middle stage of the second sky of martial art. Sometimes, fighting was also a way of cultivation. After breaking up the wolf pack blocking his way, he stepped into a small swamp. Qin Feng saw an old and dilapidated temple in the middle of the swamp. There was a piece of broken wall around the temple. He could still see its former glory from the remnant. 6 Cauldrons Ancient Temple. When he saw this ancient temple, Qin Feng had already confirmed that this was the location of the ruins he was looking for. This was because the 6 Cauldrons Ancient Temple had a very prominent feature. 6 bronze cauldrons. At the entrance of the ancient temple, there were 6 ancient and rusty bronze cauldrons lined up in a row. Qin Feng did not choose to approach at the first moment, because there were a few strange creatures lying at the entrance of the ancient temple. They had long mouths, bloody mouths filled with serrated teeth, and dense scales that were streamlined like bronze. With one look, one could tell that they were very powerful. Seeing this kind of ferocious beast, Qin Feng secretly took a breath of cold air. Green rock crocodile, the overlord of this swamp. It was an extremely rare ferocious beast that even the king of the jungle, the tiger, had to retreat when it saw it. One of them could easily kill a pack of wolves, tigers, and leopard. At the entrance of the ancient temple, there was not only one, but 3. Chapter 13. Qin Feng fell into deep thought as he looked at the situation in the 6 Cauldron Ancient Temple from a few hundred feet away and saw the green rock crocodiles frolicking around. I never thought that there would be such ferocious beasts around the 6 Cauldron Ancient Temple. The green rock crocodiles are famous for their strong defense. Their thick scales are almost comparable to the shells of the ferocious beasts of the turtle tribe. What's more, they have a mouthful of steel teeth that can easily bite through refined iron. Not to mention the second sky of the martial path, even the third sky of the martial path, who has the strength to throw an elephant, might not be able to defeat these beasts. I can't defeat them with brute force, I can only defeat them with my wits. Qin Feng stroked his smooth chin as his eyes revealed traces of wisdom. After pondering for a moment, his eyes suddenly lit up and he laughed. I remember now. These beasts seem to have a weakness. They usually live in the mud of the swamp and eat the creatures in the mud as their food. However, they are especially afraid of the fragrance of lotus flowers, especially the powder of the lotus flowers. Once they smell the fragrance, they will hide in the mud. Lotus flowers grow in the mud but are not stained. They are pure but not demonic. They are the nemesis of these beasts in the mud. There seems to be lotus flowers in the periphery of the barbaric mountain range. I will make a simple perfume bag to avoid these green rock crocodiles. Qin Feng smiled gently and his figure disappeared. After a few hours, he came back again with a perfume bag that emitted the faint smell of lotus flowers. This time, with the sachet on their waists, the green rock crocodiles lying lazily on the rocks at the entrance of the ancient temple suddenly became restless and restless. Pairs of murky yellow eyes stared at the figure that was approaching from afar. They were both violent and angry. Qin Feng held the perfume bag and was on guard. Wind blew under his feet as if his body was weightless. He stepped on the mud as if he was treading on the wave. This was the mystery of the first sky of the martial path, the power of the square inch. The power of the square inch was gathered into one point and all the strength was restrained, making the body as light as a swallow. He did not let down his guard. These green rock crocodiles looked very hostile. If it was not for the perfume bag on his waist that emitted a smell that the green rock crocodiles hated, they would have already rushed over. Roar. After a few low warning sounds, the green rock crocodile laid on the ground and raised its long sharp mouth, looking like it was about to attack. Qin Feng's eyes were filled with vigilance as he stared at the several large crocodiles. Step by step, he approached the crocodiles as a surge of energy gathered in his hands. If these crocodiles made any strange movements, he would launch a thunderous attack. However, what made him let out a sigh of relief was that perhaps the lotus flower sachet had taken effect. When the 3 green rock crocodiles were within 100 feet of him, they finally couldn't endure it any longer. After letting out a low roar, they nimbly rushed into the mud. With a wave of their tails, they stirred up the mud and disappeared. Whoosh! Qin Feng's chest heaved up and down as he drew in a deep breath. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he stomped on the ground, causing the mud beneath his feet to explode. Borrowing this force, he shot forth like an arrow, shooting towards a huge boulder where the ancient temple was located. I've finally arrived at the 6 Cauldron Ancient Temple. Looking at the ancient temple in front of him, Qin Feng's heart was slightly agitated. This was a huge ancient temple with a magnificent hall. However, because it had been there for so long, it was unknown which ancient god was being worshipped. The golden body of the god on the altar had already changed beyond recognition. Qin Feng stepped into the hall. This hall was vast and had a large dome. He didn't know what material this ancient temple was made of, but after experiencing the baptism of time, other than being a bit dilapidated, the overall layout was still very complete. Once he stepped inside, he would feel a sense of tranquility and awe towards the god being worshipped in this temple. Looking at the style, this should be a temple left behind from the ancient era. The layout of this temple is very similar to those ancient temples from the ancient era. The god being worshipped here is a certain god. Qin Feng's eyes swept across the ancient temple and finally landed on the 6 bronze cauldrons. These 6 cauldrons were simple in design and had some primitive and ancient patterns engraved on them. There were also some mysterious ancient scripts that even Qin Feng, who thought he had a strong memory, couldn't recognize. He only knew that this might be the language of a small tribe that had disappeared in the long river of time. After searching a few rounds, Qin Feng returned to his original spot with a vexed expression. He searched around but couldn't find the mechanism to open the underground ruins. His eyes revealed a strange light and his expression was full of depression. His eyes swept across the small corners of the surroundings as he thought to himself, "This is strange. Why can't I find the entrance to this underground palace? Could it be hidden in some kind of restriction? Could it be that there's a formation that I can't see through?" Qin Feng believed that he had some attainments in the restriction Tao. One had to know that in his previous life, in order to rob tombs and excavate ruins to find information about breaking through to the divine devil realm, he had put in a lot of effort in the restriction Tao. Otherwise, he wouldn't have dared to treat these terrifying ruins as his own backyard, running around and plundering everywhere. However, after searching the entire ancient temple in front of him, he couldn't find any clues. Not to mention entering, he couldn't even find the entrance. That's not right. I must have overlooked something. Qin Feng's eyes searched every corner of the 6 cauldrons ancient temple and finally landed on the 6 simple and unadorned bronze cauldrons that were mottled with rust. Seeing these 6 cauldrons, his heart skipped a beat. He took a few steps forward and pressed on one of the cauldrons, circulating his strength to move it. However, he suddenly found a clue. He only felt a heavy force following him, and he couldn't move the bronze cauldron at all. Qin Feng was shocked. He had just broken through to the 2nd firmament of the martial path and had the strength to fight a tiger. Logically speaking, moving a bronze cauldron that weighed more than 1,000 pounds shouldn't be a problem. However, he couldn't move the bronze cauldron at all. It was as if the cauldron had taken root under his feet and was connected to the earth. There's something mysterious about these cauldrons. Qin Feng came to a sudden understanding, and he hurriedly inspected the cauldrons from top to bottom. But after inspecting them, his brows instantly knit together. Even though the quality of these cauldrons was bronze, the material they were made from was a type of peculiar ore that even he didn't know. This ore had a deep texture and was extremely heavy. Its hardness was comparable to that of 10,000-year-old copper essence. It couldn't be cut by a knife or soaked in water. Qin Feng carefully examined them. Apart from the fact that these 6 cauldrons were relatively hard, there was nothing strange about them. No, there were also patterns. Qin Feng's mind flashed. He remembered a detail that he had overlooked. It was only because the patterns on the cauldrons had been eroded by the wind and rain over the years that he had overlooked it. Now that he thought about it, the information about the entrance to the underground ruins might be recorded on these 6 cauldrons. Sure enough, Qin Feng discovered another clue when he examined them again. Although many of the diagrams on these 6 cauldrons had become slightly blurry when he looked at them and put them together, he seemed to be able to discover a trace of peculiarity. It seemed that the blurry patterns on the 6 cauldrons were linked in a different order and cultivated into a strange posture. Qin Feng tried to look at each cauldron in a clockwise direction. Suddenly, there was something different. It seemed that all the blurry patterns on the cauldrons had become vivid. As if he was looking at flowers on horseback, these patterns flew out and turned into a little person. This little person was actually performing a set of fist arts. Fist arts. There was a fist art hidden on these cauldrons. Qin Feng was startled. Soon, he discovered that this was a very familiar fist art. He had seen this fist art being performed by someone before. It was called the Spirit Snake Demon Fist Art. This fist art was said to be created based on the various changes derived from the spirit snake's battle. Its power was extraordinary and it was an extremely precious intermediate spiritual martial realm fist art. On the other hand, looking at the 6 cauldrons in a counterclockwise direction, the pattern suddenly changed and turned into another intermediate spiritual martial realm fist art, the Black Tortoise Sea Subduing Fist. Qin Feng's mind flashed with a trace of inspiration. Could it be that the condition to enter the ancient temple was to cultivate these 2 fist arts in order to open a certain mechanism and enter the underground ruins? Chapter 14. This was different from the information that Qin Feng had received. In that ancient book, there was no record of such a troublesome matter. It only said that after the Qin disciple accidentally entered the underground palace, he found that there was nothing to gain and reported the location of the ruins to Qin Feng, the 7th young master of the Qin clan. Then, Qin Feng accidentally found the alchemy furnace used to refine the Xuanwu divine pill and swallowed it. Could it be that the records of the later generations were wrong, or that the Xuanwu divine venerable Qin Feng deliberately concealed some details? Then what was his purpose? Could it be because of the 2 sets of fist techniques on the bronze cauldrons? That makes sense. These 2 sets of spirit martial realm fist techniques are extremely precious. It would be inappropriate to spread them out. Qin Feng couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he racked his brains. A ripple flashed in his eyes. Maybe there was something fishy about this underground ruin. Forget it, let's first master this fist technique. I have come in contact with these 2 fist techniques in the later generations. It shouldn't be difficult to master them to the Deshang level. Qin Feng once again scanned the 6 cauldrons in a clockwise manner. The cauldrons changed again. A set of vivid fist techniques appeared in front of his eyes. Small figures appeared in the void one by one. They were like spirit snakes, performing the various subtleties of the spirit snake exorcism fist technique. Wonderful, this spirit snake exorcism fist technique is a true martial realm fist technique that trains the flexibility of the limbs. Once mastered, the limbs will become as flexible as a spirit snake, adding some agility. The more Qin Feng looked at it, the brighter his eyes became. He found that this spirit snake exorcism fist technique was more complex than the ones he had come in contact with. It had a trace of indescribable charm. However, this charm was like a finishing touch. In front of his eyes, it was as if a spirit snake was fighting with an ancient demon. The vast and mighty artistic conception spread out. He couldn't help but dance with this spirit snake. Spirit snake out of the cave. Qin Feng's entire body was like a spirit snake. He coiled up, imitating the posture of the first picture of the spirit snake demon subduing fist art. However, as soon as he moved, he frowned. An obscure feeling came from his legs and waist, as if it was pressing down on his bones. His legs and feet went numb, and as soon as he moved, he saw stars. All of his bones felt like they were about to break, and his muscles were torn apart. This won't do. It's still too forceful to suddenly cultivate this fist technique that has extremely high requirements on the flexibility of the muscles and bones. Forcefully cultivating it will only produce the opposite of the desired result. Relying on his strong willpower, he struggled to get up and took the starting position of the clear wind spirit refining pillar. All the bones in his body vibrated in a mysterious rhythm, slowly dispersing the accumulated blood energy and driving away the numbness, pain and bitterness. 1 hour later, Qin Feng opened his eyes. This time, he felt better than ever. The negative pain from before had been swept away. Even his muscles and bones seemed to have been tempered. Again, Qin Feng was overjoyed. He picked up the spirit snake demon subduing fist art again. His body followed the spirit snake's dance. This time, it was a little easier. He made one more posture. He only needed 7 more to reach the 9 postures of the first picture. Qin Feng didn't crawl to the ground this time. Instead, he used his willpower to suppress the pain and began to practice the clear wind spirit refining pillar. Once, twice, thrice, 4 times, a total of 10 times. After a whole afternoon, Qin Feng just managed to learn the first picture of the spirit snake out of the cave. Qin Feng rested for a while. He went out once to find a few fat rabbits. After eating, he began to practice the second picture of the 6 pictures. The second picture was more difficult. He spent half the night to succeed. The hardships were indescribable. He was so tired that he almost collapsed several times. However, Qin Feng also discovered that this was not without benefit. As he cultivated the second scroll, his potential was unexpectedly excavated in this almost oppressive cultivation. He was getting closer and closer to the middle stage of the second heaven of martial art. Qin Feng had a feeling that if he could successfully cultivate all 6 diagrams, advancing to the middle stage of the second firmament of the martial path would be a piece of cake. Whoosh whoosh. Qin Feng's chest heaved up and down as a gust of wind blew over. Right now, it was already the latter half of the night. Qin Feng felt somewhat sleepy. After cultivating for such a long time, even though his will was strong, his body couldn't endure it any longer. He was both sleepy and tired, as though his entire body had melted. Glancing at the dark sky, Qin Feng decided to lie down beside the 6 cauldrons and take a nap. The second day, the third picture, the fourth picture, after a whole day and night, Qin Feng just managed to cultivate the spirit snake demon subduing fist art. In front of the cold ancient temple, everything was silent. The silver moon hung high in the sky like a silver plate, shining on the ground like frost and snow. His aura flourished. His bones, muscles, and meridians became more compact. Under the moonlight, his upper body was exposed, revealing a bronze-like texture. His chest rose and fell. His breath was like frost. Under the moonlight, his skin was like a bright snake's scales, revealing a sense of toughness. Now, when he used the spirit snake demon subduing fist, there wasn't the slightest bit of obscurity. Every punch and move was easily grasped. There wasn't the slightest bit of difficulty or obscurity. His long shadow spread out. Under the moonlight, It was like a spirit snake dancing in front of the ancient temple. The spirit snake came out of the cave, the spirit snake coiled, the spirit snake worshipped the moon. His aura was obscure and agile. Unsurprisingly, he had already broken through to the middle stage of the second heavenly layer. However, in terms of battle strength, he was confident that he could compete with a martial artist of the third heavenly layer after cultivating the spirit snake demon subduing fist. So far, although he hadn't cultivated the spirit snake demon subduing fist to the Deshang level, he had just barely mastered this spirit martial realm fist art. Next, he began to cultivate the black tortoise sea subduing fist. This was a fist art that focused on the lower body. The black tortoise sea subduing fist was stable and heavy. Only with such a heavy force could it subdue the ever-changing ocean. With a punch, no matter what changes you made, you wouldn't be able to escape the suppression of the black tortoise. If the spirit snake was moving, it would win with the spirit fire. Then the black tortoise would be suppressing with calmness. It would use its strength to suppress the changes of the four seas. Its heart would be as still as water, without any ripples. Similarly, the black tortoise sea subduing fist also had 6 diagrams. He spent 2 days to master it. With the completion of this fist art, Qin Feng's middle stage of the second heavenly layer advanced a small step. He was only 1 step away from the late stage of the second heavenly layer. As for the changes in the fist art, he had a clearer understanding. Each palm and fist carried a unique power. It moved like lightning and was as calm as the waves of the ocean. It dissolved, contained, and suppressed everything. His battle strength had increased greatly. Qin Feng tried to lift the cauldrons again, but he still failed. Although Qin Feng's strength had increased by more than 2 times compared to before he came here, the power of the black tortoise and the craftiness of the spirit snake were not enough to shake the 6 cauldrons. Qin Feng had no choice but to return to the original place and look at the images in the cauldrons. Only this time the images changed again. When he swept his eyes clockwise and then counterclockwise, the images in his eyes began to blend and change. They had a new meaning. This was something Qin Feng had not discovered. In other words, if he hadn't mastered the spirit snake subduing devil fist and the black tortoise sea subduing fist, he wouldn't have been able to understand the meanings that had been neglected in the past. It seemed that there was another fist art hidden in the blending of the images. After Qin Feng carefully watched it for hundreds of times, he finally discovered its secret. It turned out that this was a combination of fist art. The deepest mysteries were hidden in the images of the 2 fist arts. It was a set of fist arts that included how to bring out the power of movement and stillness to the limit, how to blend them into one, how to combine movement and stillness into a perfect taiji. Black Tortoise Yin Yang Dao. Unknowingly, Qin Feng came into contact with the broken mysteries from the images, and the name of a fist art appeared in his mind. This was a set of true martial rank fist art. It actually contained a trace of the ancient divine beast Black Tortoise's true martial intent. Black Tortoise, dragon head, tortoise body, scales and armor. Spirit snake and Black Tortoise as one. Isn't that the Black Tortoise? Qin Feng was shocked. Below was the Black Tortoise divine pellet. Above was the Black Tortoise divine fist inheritance. In his previous life, Qin Feng was known as the Black Tortoise Divine Venerable. Could this be the secret he was deliberately hiding? Only by mastering the Black Tortoise Divine Fist could he open the underground ruins and refine the Black Tortoise Divine Pellet to obtain the power of the Black Tortoise. Chapter 15. The Black Tortoise was a famous ancient mythical beast. It was one of the most powerful mythical beasts that suppressed the ocean. An adult black tortoise was no weaker than Qin Feng at his peak. The black tortoise Yin Yang Wei was named after the black tortoise. It contained the mysteries of movement and stillness. Once cultivated, it could condense a trace of the ancient black tortoise's power. It had the power to suppress all things. However, to deshang this fist technique, one must have the black tortoise's blood essence. The black tortoise's blood essence. Isn't the black tortoise's divine pill made from the black tortoise's divine fetus? The black tortoise's divine fetus is a real black tortoise's divine egg. Qin Feng's brain could not wrap itself around it. Soon, he understood. There is a true martial level inheritance here. Qin Feng's heart was greatly shaken. There was actually a true martial level secret technique hidden here. Even with his experience, he still found it hard to believe. A true martial level secret technique was extremely precious even in his previous life. A true martial level secret technique contained a trace of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Not to mention its power, just the trace of true martial intent was already immensely beneficial for cultivation. This kind of secret technique was extremely rare even in some first-rate sects. It was a treasure that countless people wanted to snatch. It was not hard to imagine that even the Qin family, who dominated the upper river town, only had one spiritual martial level technique. However, this spiritual martial level technique was already coveted by many rogue cultivators. How precious was this true martial level technique? If the slightest bit of information was leaked, there would be a river of blood here. Countless famous people would come to fight for it. Suppressing the surprise in his heart, Qin Feng sat down cross-legged and began to comprehend this true martial-level fist technique. The black tortoise yin-yang way was a true martial-level fist technique. Its Tao essence was deep, obscure, and profound. Its true martial intent was like a majestic mountain towering into the sky. Even for someone as intelligent as Qin Feng, it would be extremely difficult for him to comprehend it. There were many areas that he didn't know what to make of. This was not because he did not have enough comprehension. If he was at his peak, it would not be so difficult to comprehend a true martial-level fist technique. It was because he was reborn. All his previous realms had disappeared, except for his wisdom, will, and experience. Everything had to start over. Naturally, it was difficult to comprehend it. As he slowly comprehended this fist technique, his train of thought became clearer. The mystic Yang Yin-Yang Tao was indeed worthy of the name of the black tortoise Yin-Yang. This fist art described a trace of the martial truth of the Yin and Yang of the world. In the fist art, the black tortoise was not only the god that suppressed the ocean, but also the god that suppressed all the changes of Yin and Yang. This made Qin Feng very surprised. Everyone knew that whether it was in myths or ancient books, the black tortoise was the god of the sea. Very few people mentioned the transformation of Yin and Yang. Suddenly, Qin Feng remembered that in his previous life, he seemed to have chatted with an old tortoise that had lived for tens of thousands of years. The old tortoise had vaguely mentioned that the black tortoise was actually a variant of the dragon snake, and was also known as the tortoise dragon. In the past, he did not take it seriously and only treated it as a story. Now that he suddenly remembered, a bolt of lightning flashed through his mind. That's right. The black tortoise has the head of a dragon, the body of a tortoise, and the tail of a snake. The dragon is Yang and the snake is Yin. Outside the black tortoise is the 8 trigrams. Isn't it the 8 trigrams god of Yin and Yang? The black tortoise controlled the Yin and Yang, the dragon snake and tortoise 3 transformations. In a trance, Qin Feng slowly drew out a black tortoise from his mind. At the same time, the various fist arts of the black tortoise yin-yang Tao rushed into his mind like thunder and lightning and merged with the black tortoise's mind. The black tortoise's mind seemed to have a charm and suddenly became lively. With this movement, Qin Feng seemed to see countless mysterious mysteries. This true martial-level fist art seemed to have opened up the hazy mysteries to him. Countless insights flowed through his mind. The black tortoise yin-yang Tao had 3 moves. The first move was the movement and stillness move, the second was the rotation move, and the third was the yin and yang move. Understanding movement and stillness, understanding hardness and softness, mastering yin and yang, one could understand the essence of the black tortoise yin-yang Tao. As long as he mastered the first move, he would have the power of the third sky of the martial path to throw an elephant. He would be able to easily move the 6 black tortoise cauldrons. The first move of the black tortoise yin-yang Tao, the movement and stillness move, was actually not difficult for him at the moment. The spirit snake represented movement and the black tortoise represented stillness. The combination of movement and stillness was the black tortoise. Qin Feng sat cross-legged around the 6 black tortoise cauldrons. At the moment, his mind was filled with images of little people. These little people's images were violently changing, performing all kinds of fists of movement and stillness. The fists and palms were filled with a vast, grand, and inclusive aura. With a single palm strike, it seemed to be able to calm the ocean and easily control the changes of the ocean's tides. It was also able to deduce layers of different powers, sometimes folding, sometimes like a whirlpool swallowing everything. The little figures in his mind seemed to have turned into a huge monster with a dragon head and a tortoise body. It was majestic and could suppress the ocean. This was the black tortoise true intent. As long as one could comprehend this trace of the black tortoise true intent, one could be considered to have completely mastered this fist art. To be precise, it could be said to be 3 fist arts. The spirit snake demon fist, the black tortoise sea suppressing fist art, and the black tortoise yin-yang Tao. It could also be said that this was a complete set of fist arts. It was just that the black tortoise yin-yang Tao was the foundation, while the spirit snake and the black tortoise transformed into the technique. Qin Feng, who was sitting on the ground, began to move one of his hands. Sometimes it was a palm strike, sometimes it was a finger-guessing game. When it was a palm strike, the palm force was torrential, and when it was a fist, the force was deep. Following that, his other hand also slowly changed its posture. It floated gently like a spirit snake, and every strike was faster than lightning. What was amazing was that his movements were as smooth as flowing water. It was so graceful, without a trace of obscurity. An invisible force pervaded his arm. With his muscles as the scales and his bones as the axis, the force was extraordinarily terrifying. As immovable as a mountain, it was as shocking as thunder. Gradually, there was a trace of the black tortoise's charm. It was as if every time he channeled, a deep force would descend and suppress the void. A black tortoise was roaring and roaring. Just as Qin Feng was diligently practicing the black tortoise fist art, a group of people was heading in the direction of the swamp ancient temple. They had already arrived at the ancient scholar tree forest. There were old and young people in this group. The old people had a strict temperament, while the young people had a cold expression. However, every one of them exuded a unique aura of martial arts. The leader was a man in a green robe. He was tall and sturdy, with an iron beard on his cheek. His eyes were like a hawk's, and he carried a broad broadsword on his back. His whole body exuded an extremely oppressive aura, which showed that he had an unfathomable cultivation. Beside him was a man with a medium build and a yellow face. He was holding a piece of a map and comparing it. His eyes were looking around, as if he was looking for something. This group of people was from the Ning family of Three River Town. The leader was a man in a green robe, who was quite an important figure in the Ning family. Their purpose was to find a mysterious relic hidden in the periphery of the Savage Mountain Range. This map was originally preserved in an extremely ancient cave. Later, because of the Earth's changes, it was discovered by a disciple of the Qin family. However, this disciple was unlucky and happened to meet this deacon of the Ning family, who killed him and seized it. The value of a piece of a map that recorded a mysterious relic was too great. Not to mention, what if there were any elixirs, treasures, or cultivation methods hidden in the ruins? This was definitely a rare opportunity for a deacon who had cultivated to the 5th heavenly layer of the martial path and had a mediocre position in the family. If he could obtain some kind of elixir, he might be able to soar to the sky and become one of the leaders of the family. After obtaining the map, he only needed to prepare a little before he brought his trusted subordinates to the savage mountain range recorded in the map. Deacon Ning, according to the address recorded in the map, the relic is near this forest. A man with a medium build and a yellow face pointed at the ancient scholar tree forest in front of them and said, "This map shows that there is an ancient temple in the relic. The ancient temple is surrounded by a swamp, and in front of the swamp is a forest. According to what I know, behind this ancient scholar tree forest is a swamp. A herb gatherer said that there is an ancient temple in the swamp, so it should be in that area. However, there are many giant wolves in this ancient scholar tree forest." The man in a green robe said slowly, "Bring some people over and clean up these giant wolves." The man with a yellow face frowned and said, "Deacon Ning, a brother just reported that there are people from the Qin family nearby. They are wantonly searching the mountain, as if they are looking for life. I'm worried that if we make a big move, we might attract their attention." The man in a green robe said indifferently, "Do you know what they are searching for?" The man with a yellow face shook his head. "This subordinate doesn't know. I only know that they have mobilized many people to search this mountain range. The leader is the 6th young master of the Qin family, Qin Myun." The man with a yellow face said worriedly, "Could it be that we leaked the news and attracted them?" The man in a green robe pondered for a moment and said, "Impossible. I found this map fragment in an uninhabited ancient cave. The person who knew about it is already dead. Other than me, there is no one else who knows about it." The man with a yellow face heaved a sigh of relief and said, "If that's the case, what should we do?" The man in a green robe said ferociously with his thick eyebrows, "This is a little troublesome. You and I are both from Sanha Town. Although the Ning family is also the overlord of Sanha Town and is not weaker than the Qin family of Shangha Town and the Yu family of Xiahe Town, this place is still close to the territory of the Qin family. If we alarm them and arouse their suspicions, it will be very inappropriate. Let's avoid them first and wait for any changes. We will act according to the situation." In another place, Qin Muhan, Qin Shu, and the others gathered together and were also discussing. Qin Shu was a calm and sturdy young man. He had a little beard at the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were calm. He said, "Is there still no news? Did 9th brother really enter the barbaric mountain range?" Qin Muhan said with a smile, "Big brother, don't worry. 6th brother is too incompetent. He can't even follow a piece of trash. However, 6th brother has brought all the confidants he has recruited over the years and scattered them out. I believe there will be news soon. We just need to wait patiently." "Piece of trash." Qin Shu's eyes moved slightly and he sneered in his heart. 9th brother was not an easy person to deal with. Although 6th brother was not very capable, he could get rid of his tracking. It was probably not something an ordinary person could do. Perhaps 9th brother, who used to be a piece of trash, really had some secrets? Qin Shu's eyes flashed with a trace of fluctuation. However, no matter what the secret was, he must get it. In addition, Qin Shu had a layer of hidden concern. Qin Muyun, an incompetent guy, had made such a big move in order to find a person. Qin Feng was probably not unaware. He was probably hiding somewhere, preparing to be the oriole behind the mantis stalking the cicada. His eyes swept across the forest. His eyes were as sharp as a knife. There was a trace of undetectable coldness in his eyes. Chapter 16. 3 days later, Qin Feng sat in front of the 6 Cauldrons ancient temple, almost forgetting to eat and sleep to comprehend this true martial-level fist art. The profoundness of this true martial-level fist art were far beyond other low-level technique. Qin Feng spent 3 whole days and only scratched the surface. He could only barely learn the first move of the black tortoise yin-yang art. When Qin Feng mastered the first stance, the second heavenly layer of the martial path naturally reached the grand perfection stage. His bones and tendons had reached the stage of being tempered, just like the black tortoise dragon bone. During this process, he had undergone tempering over and over again. After being tempered countless times, his muscles and bones were like perfect dragon bones. With just a little bit of strength, he could easily burst out with 99 June of strength. 99 June of strength was already the limit of the second sky of the martial path. Unless the third sky of the martial path changed the blood would be like lead. Only then would one be able to break through 100 June and have the strength to throw an elephant. But Qin Feng felt that he had only scratched the surface of this true martial-level fist art. Not even scratched the surface. In fact, this was the case. The essence of the black tortoise yin-yang art was the principles of heaven and earth contained in it. It could be said that although it had the form, it was the spirit that was important. This was a Tao-level fist art. As long as one could comprehend the principles of heaven and earth, they could be used in other fist art. What made Qin Feng feel the most inconceivable was that as he comprehended a trace of the mystery of the motionless style, he had barely comprehended the first style of the black tortoise yin-yang Tao. The seemingly ordinary spirit snake subduing devil fist and black tortoise sea subduing fist actually gave birth to countless mysteries out of thin air. He only felt that when he executed them now, their power was several times stronger than before. It was as if he had opened a closed acupuncture point, giving birth to countless ideas and creativity. Many of the ordinary moves of the two martial arts were combined in pairs, or in twos and threes, which increased their power. He had a lot of enlightenment. Amazing, this Six Cauldrons ancient temple actually has such a marvelous fist art. No wonder Qin Feng was later called the Black Tortoise Divine Venerable. Qin Feng smacked his lips. No one would have thought that this shabby temple would contain such a shocking fist art. At this moment, the sharp-eyed Qin Feng found that there seemed to be a lot of guests near the swamp forest. Looking from afar, there were a lot of people. It was very lively. The group of people who just came out of the ancient scholar tree forest naturally also saw the young man who was practicing his fist art next to the ancient temple. A hurried figure squeezed out of the crowd. At first glance, he recognized the familiar figure at the entrance of the ancient temple. In just a few days, Qin Muon and the others actually found this ancient temple. He was dressed in a brocade robe and wore a crown of stars and moon on his head. His handsome eyebrows were slanted and his eyes were filled with excitement and impatience. Probably because he had been in the forest for a long time, he was in a rather sorry state. His soft feather robe was in a mess. Sixth young master Qin Feng seems. Fist art? Is there some secret book left by Qin Zhan? This damn trash is so leisurely. Qin Muon pushed away a few servants who came up with flattering faces. His eyes were full of killing intent and anger. Idiot, since you found him, why don't you go and catch this bastard? Sixth young master Qin flew into a rage, berating loudly and fiercely. He had been going around in circles in the forest for the past few days, and he was about to explode from anger. If it wasn't for the humiliation and anger in his heart supporting him, he would have gone crazy. It was a great shame. As a direct descendant of the Qin family, he was played by a trash time and time again. How could he face others if this spread out? Young master, watch carefully, your subordinate will immediately capture this disrespectful disciple back to you. An evil-looking man immediately jumped out and patted his chest. His face was full of joy. The opportunity to perform a meritorious service had come. With his cultivation at the middle stage of the first sky of martial path, it was easy to catch a trash without cultivation. The man had a strong back and a bare waist. He had a leopard head and round eyes. He held a big machete in his hand. His appearance was very good. As soon as he said that, the surrounding guards cheered secretly. Even Qin Muyun's face looked better. He squeezed out a smile reluctantly. That's great. Afraid that the guards would fight for the merit, the man waved his machete and blocked the people who were about to take action. He smiled proudly in the anger of the guards. There's no need to use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. There's no need to bother two people for one thing. It's just a trash, so there's no need to bother brothers. I just need to make a trip. After he finished speaking, he deliberately waved his arms to show off his perfect and sturdy muscles in order to show his bravery. Although they were dozens of feet away from the swamp, cultivators had sharp ears and eyes. Of course, Qin Feng could hear the voice of the evil-looking man. Moreover, the evil-looking man deliberately shouted loudly, afraid that he could not show off his bravery. Qin Muyun was finally here. He was not surprised that Qin Muyun could track him here. Although the periphery of the barbaric mountains was huge, this place was very close to the Qiang Mountains. As long as Qin Muyun wanted to, he could easily find this place. However, now that he had mastered the first move of the Black Tortoise Yin Yang Dao, it did not matter even if he found it. It was not an easy task to get into this swamp. Don't forget, there were some hungry green rock crocodiles in this swamp. Those big guys were not so friendly to guests who trespassed into their territory. Separated by dozens of feet, Qin Feng seemed to see Qin Muyun's proud eyes. Facing such a gaze, Qin Feng directly said, "Silly." As if he had noticed Qin Feng's contempt and disdain, the evil-looking man could not hold back his anger. He carried the mountain-splitting ghost saber and charged into the dark, moist, and bubbling swamp. It seemed that he was going to rush over in one breath. That evil man was rampaging through the swamp like a bull charging forward. The earth was shaking. It was as if a cannonball had been thrown into the swamp. In just a short while, he had already crossed 2/3 of the swamp. That mighty appearance made Qin Feng unable to help but raise his eyebrows. Qin Muyun, on the other hand, had a smile on her face. He was about to reach the rock where the ancient temple was. Ah! Suddenly, the man who had initiated the charge let out a heroic scream. With a splash, he was dragged into the swamp like a loach. Bang! 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 The sound of prey fighting with the predator could be heard from the swamp. Occasionally, the sound of a pig being slaughtered could be heard. What was going on? Qin Muyun and the others were dumbfounded. How did the man disappear halfway through? What a fool! This swamp is the territory of the green rock crocodiles. Even I, the old ancestor, do not dare to charge in. You still want to charge in? You must be tired of living. Qin Feng stood on the rock and looked at this cruel scene with a mocking smile. Although he did not say anything, it was enough to make Qin Muyun angry. The sixth young master's face turned red. When had the arrogant him ever been mocked like this? He gritted his teeth. Charge in for this young master. No matter what the hell is in this swamp, charge in and capture that damned bastard. The expressions of the guards were not good. This swamp was too dangerous. They had not seen such a brave and fierce man swallowing his face and head in the blink of an eye. Who knew if there were any vicious traps or ferocious beasts in this swamp? Seeing the hesitation and fear on the faces of the guards, Qin Muyun was so angry that he vomited blood. These guys usually boasted about how powerful they were, saying that they would go through a mountain of swords and a sea of fire for him. However, when it came to doing things, they were all scared to death. Seeing that these people were not willing to go forward, Qin Feng felt a little regretful. The green rock crocodiles in the swamp must be very hungry now. His gaze fell on the 6 ancient cauldrons. His expression changed, and his claws moved like the wind. The first style of the Black Tortoise Sea suppressing fist was suddenly blasted out. A strong force surged between his 5 fingers, and a huge force bombarded the Black Tortoise ancient cauldrons. Buzz! A formless sound wave rippled out. It seemed to have an extremely special rhythm. Faintly, the 6 cauldrons were vibrating at the same time. It seemed that the mysterious method of the black tortoise sea suppressing fist was the key to these 6 cauldrons. It was compatible with some kind of mechanism, using the fist as the key and the sound wave as the bearing to open the mechanism. Even with Qin Feng's knowledge, he could not help but be amazed by the ingenuity of the mechanism. Rumble. Inside and outside the ancient temple, the 6 ancient cauldrons began to rotate in the same axis under the shocked gazes of everyone. The rumbling sound was deafening, and the whole swamp was shaking as if an earth dragon was turning over. Slowly, the 6 cauldrons moved 3 feet horizontally, revealing an underground door under the 6 ancient cauldrons. Qin Feng's eyes lit up. He instantly knew that this must be the entrance to the underground ruins. Without thinking, he jumped down. What is that place? Outside the swamp, a group of people stared with their eyes wide open. Idiot, do you even need to ask? It must be a place where treasures are hidden. Maybe there are some elixirs or secret manuals in there. Someone shouted with red eyes. Qin Muyun's eyes were wide open. This trash old ninth really has a big secret. Rumble. At this moment, the underground entrance began to shake again. The ground shook, and the mechanism closed. Oh no, the entrance is closing. Everyone, let's go. Someone's eyes bulged and quickly turned red. The entrance to the treasure cave was closing. Seeing that only half of the door was left, it was terrible. Don't close the door. A heart-wrenching and grief-stricken voice sounded in this quiet swamp. The figures no longer cared about the inexplicable danger hidden in the swamp and risked their lives. Among them, Qin Muyun was the fastest. However, what welcomed them was a bloody mouth. The green rock crocodiles in the swamp seemed to have heard the sound of the dinner bell. One by one, they jumped out of the swamp like carps jumping into the water. Their beautiful figures were like mermaids, making them look like beautiful mermaid. However, in the eyes of the guards, they were undoubtedly more terrifying than evil spirits. Whenever a green rock crocodile jumped out of the swamp, a greedy soul would be sucked into its sawtooth mouth. The charging figures were like dumplings, falling into the terrifying mouths of the green rock crocodiles. Screams and curses resounded in this small swamp. Qin Muyun's eyes were red. He ran all the way. His luck was very good. He actually avoided the green rock crocodiles with big mouths and rushed into the ancient temple. Rumble. At this moment, all the mechanisms were about to close. The entrance to the underground ruins was only left with a palm-sized gap. It seemed that it was impossible to enter. Don't close it, don't close it. Let me in. 6th young Master Qin's eyes were red. He roared loudly and pounced forward like a hungry tiger. Unfortunately, the mechanism was completely closed. His face was ashen, and his gaze was as though he was going to devour someone. Chi-chi. A few consecutive air-piercing sounds were heard. A green-robed man with a majestic aura rushed in first. His body was covered in blood. His aura was trembling and unfathomable. The trembling of his aura caused Qin Muyun to spit out a mouthful of blood and roll several feet away. Looking at the mechanism that was completely closed, the green-robed man was furious. Chapter 17. Rumble. The mechanism above his head closed, and the entire underground palace rumbled. After Qin Feng jumped into the underground palace, he did not go in immediately. Instead, he stayed on the stone steps at the entrance. His aura was condensed as he stared at the entrance. If someone followed him in, they would definitely receive a shocking attack from him. Fortunately, no one came in until the entrance closed again. The underground ruins were extremely large. It looked like a huge and spacious underground palace. Qin Feng turned around and walked in, his eyes filled with surprise. This underground palace seemed to have been man-made. There were a few stone rooms at the entrance, and they were fully equipped. There were stone stools, stone tables, stone pots, stone stoves, and some porcelain vases and chopsticks. The layout was simple, but even though it was small, it had everything. Splash! From afar, Qin Feng heard the sound of a clear spring flowing. His body moved, and he rushed out like a cheetah. After passing through 2 or 3 stone rooms, a clear spring appeared. The faint sound of water came from one of the springs. Qin Feng squatted down and casually scooped up a handful of clear water. It was refreshing. There should be an underground river below. Qin Feng's gaze followed this spring that came out from underground. It formed a clear stream in the underground palace and flowed towards a dark hole, forming a stream of flowing water. He stood up and walked a few hundred steps forward. After passing through a few stone rooms, Qin Feng pushed open a stone door, and a huge alchemy room appeared in front of him. A huge alchemy furnace, a room formed by the 9 palaces and 8 trigrams, and an underground fire tunnel that led to the depths of the Earth's core. This underground ruin seemed to have been abandoned for a long time. The underground fire was extinguished, and it was covered in dust. When the door opened, a gust of wind blew in, and a cloud of dust rushed in. Qin Feng hurriedly held his breath and waited for the dust to disperse before he entered the stone room and ignited the fire on the wall. The blazing light illuminated this ancient alchemy room. Under the faint fluorescent light, the first thing that entered Qin Feng's eyes was a huge alchemy furnace in the center. This furnace was as tall as a few people, and its design was strange. It was bronze in color and emitted a heavy aura. This was an extremely expensive alchemy furnace. It was as if the furnace had been baptized and nurtured by medicinal pills. Pill qi condensed and seeped into the furnace, emitting a refreshing medicinal fragrance. One could imagine that when it was busy, it must have refined countless pills. Only after experiencing the quenching of the essence of the pills would this alchemy furnace emit such a precious fragrance. It should be known that the value of an alchemy furnace was not measured by its quality, but by the number of pills it had refined. The more pills it had refined, the better the quality would be after being tempered by the pill qi. A good alchemy furnace usually had to go through thousands of years of nurturing before it could be born. Every time such an alchemy furnace was born, it would definitely cause countless alchemists to fight over it. Without a doubt, this was an extremely high-quality alchemy furnace. Qin Feng's face revealed a trace of joy. He was proficient in pharmacology and medical theory, so he was no stranger to alchemy. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was an alchemy grandmaster. A high-quality alchemy furnace with such a simple design, to an alchemist, its value was self-evident. Slightly approaching, Qin Feng could feel the eternal and inextinguishable furnace fire aura emitted by this alchemy furnace. This must be the furnace that nurtures the black tortoise divine pill in ancient legends. Qin Feng's mouth revealed a trace of a smile. The black tortoise divine pill was a divine pill that had been lost since ancient times. When a divine pill was born, even gods and devils would be moved. He did not act rashly, but instead patrolled the entire alchemy room. The alchemy room was the most important place for alchemists. Some alchemists, in order to prevent their pills from being stolen, would often set up restrictions and mechanisms. If one was not careful, it was possible to die in the alchemy room. Around the alchemist, there were rows of shelves for alchemy. On the shelves there were alchemy gourds. Qin Feng could see that these alchemy shelves had some traces of restriction placed on them before. However, it was unable to withstand the passage of time, and these restrictions had lost their effectiveness. Time is the greatest enemy of the world's powerhouses. Qin Feng sighed slightly. He went forward and picked up a gourd, opened it, and smelled it slightly. His eyes lit up. 3-flower detoxification pill. This was a type of detoxification elixir. If one accidentally ate a poisonous flower, strange fruit, or was bitten by a poisonous insect, or was poisoned by some strange poison, this elixir could be used to detoxify the poison. There were only a few terrifying poisons that this elixir could not detoxify. However, it was a pity that this elixir, perhaps because it had been stored for too long, had all turned into round fossils. They fell to the ground and turned into ashes in an instant. On this shelf were various kinds of detoxification elixirs. 9 Magnificence Dew Ointment, Black Wood Detoxification Pill, Evil Warding Pill, etc. They were all extremely precious elixirs. Unfortunately, because of the passage of time, the medicinal properties had dissipated and turned into stone. On another shelf, Qin Feng found a few more precious elixirs. The Divine Ability Barrier Breaking Pill that could break through bottleneck. This was a precious elixir that could help a martial artist break through the pulse condensation stage. Black Bone Quenching Pill. This elixir could increase true power and enhance divine abilities. Herculean God Devil Pill. This was a type of elixir that could allow one to comprehend the Herculean God Devil ability. One pill could allow one to comprehend an extremely precious divine ability. Greenwood Nature Pill. This was a type of elixir that could evolve the Greenwood divine ability and enhance the power of the Greenwood divine ability. On the other wooden shelves, Qin Feng found healing elixirs that could heal the dead and bring back bones to life. There were also elixirs with various miraculous effects. For example, elixirs that could increase a fierce beast's spirituality and even mutate and evolve. However, what made Qin Feng feel extremely regretful was that because of the passage of time, the elixirs that filled the entire alchemy room had all lost their spirituality. Looks like Qin Feng did not lie about this. The medicinal properties of the elixirs here have all dissipated. Qin Feng searched the entire alchemy room. Just as he was about to give up, he suddenly found a small mechanism on a stone wall and casually pressed it. Kacha kacha! The sound of the stone wall shaking came from the wall. Under his astonished gaze, a secret compartment appeared on the stone wall. A golden silk book appeared in the secret compartment. There's still something hidden in this secret compartment. Could it be some secret alchemy method? Qin Feng revealed a trace of interest. He casually took it and glanced at it. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Just as he had guessed, this thin page of golden silk was indeed a secret alchemy method. However, there was still a slight error in his guess. This golden silk only recorded one elixir recipe, the Black Tortoise Divine Pill. That's right, this was the goal of his trip, the Black Tortoise Divine Pill. On this piece of golden silk, the Black Tortoise Divine Pellet was indeed refined from the Black Tortoise Divine Embryo in addition to countless precious spirit herbs. However, the silk clearly stated that the black tortoise in the cauldron was only a half-finished product. The Black Tortoise Divine Pill that could allow one to have a flawless holy body was only a semi-finished product. Qin Feng's eyes widened. According to the description on this silk book, the real Black Tortoise Divine Pill could not only allow one to cultivate a flawless holy body, but it could also allow one to forge an indestructible Black Tortoise Divine Body. The complete Black Tortoise Divine Body would possess all the divine abilities and strength of the Black Tortoise. It was simply a humanoid Black Tortoise. The alchemist who wrote this silk book also said that his time was up and he encountered a life and death crisis. He could only hurriedly complete the first part of the Black Tortoise Divine Pill, hoping that his descendants would fulfill his wish and completely refine the Black Tortoise Divine Pill. The rest was a pile of ideas, methods, and some guesses about the complete Black Tortoise Divine Pill. This was an alchemy madman. Qin Feng's eyes widened. He didn't dare to imagine. A divine pill that could forge an indestructible holy body. This was too crazy. This kind of divine pill was simply heaven-defying. Especially when it involved all kinds of alchemy secrets, it was simply whimsical, invading the mysteries of the sun and moon, and seizing the essence of heaven and earth. However, with Qin Feng's wisdom and thousands of years of alchemy experience, he felt that this alchemist's crazy ideas had an inexplicable truth that involved the mysteries of heaven and earth. It directly told him that if that alchemist was still alive, there was a possibility that he could successfully refine the black tortoise divine pill. Qin Feng looked at the huge alchemy furnace, and for a moment, his eyes shone brightly. One must know that he was also an alchemy grandmaster who was proficient in alchemy. Now that he had obtained the complete black tortoise divine pill's recipe, he might have a chance to complete the final step of this black tortoise divine pill and refine the complete black tortoise divine pill. Yesterday, I received an SMS to sign a contract. Please accept, please recommend me. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.